It's done. Good evening, everybody. We've got the joint meeting of the CDD and CROA boards here this evening, so I appreciate everybody coming to order. I'm Greg Filak, the chairman for the CDD, and
I'm Cindy Swisher, the president of the Celebration Residential Owners Association.
so if we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Angel, if you can do a roll call for the CDD members, please. Here.
Tom Tuesday.
Here.
David Hume.
Present.
Jack McLaughlin.
Here.
And Sandra Stark.
Here. Geez, we've never done roll call. You want to do a roll call, Lauren?
No.
We do have a quorum. As I said, Cindy Swisher.
Charles Richards.
Julie McFadden.
Bill Grindle.
Jared Wise.
Jim Hayes.
Okay, and we do have a quorum. We're just missing David.
Perfect. All right, so as a community, as you've seen, we've got two agenda items for this evening between our two boards. The first one is talking about the potential for a community center, and the second one is a status of where CDD is at with our incorporation review, and some items that are relevant to CROA and a warranted discussion at the point we're at here. So we've got a list of folks who wanted to speak, so I'll just go in order here for opening comments from the public. So first was Kathy Whitmire. I would ask if everybody could just keep your comments to someone keep in time to 3 minutes.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
And Kathy, if you could state your address, that would be great.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Whitmire. My address is 905 Pondview Court, 20-year celebration resident. I'm sad that I have to be here. I'm sad that I have to speak about the baseball field and request that you pay attention to the items on the agenda and you think about community centers and you think about what should be your first step in creating a community center. And I'm here to tell you that your first step should be creating a location for the Celebration of the League baseball fields. For over 18 years, and I was on the original board. I am a board member for the last 18 years, since 2005, when Little League came to this town. So I know every aspect of those fields. I have laid every blade of grass on the field of that big field by hand with my children and all of the other board members. I have dug up every bit of clay on that field to put grass down on that field. I am here on behalf of all of the kids that have played on those fields and all of the players that are playing currently on those fields. You cannot put a community center up without first creating a location for the Little. We are the longest standing youth athletic organization in this town. We are the only youth organization in this town that deals with children with disabilities. I want you to think about that. One of the pillars of celebration, and we are the only youth sports organization for children with disabilities. 18 years ago, we started the regular league. 16 years ago, we started the Challenger Division of Little League. We were the only ones in Osceola County and Orange County doing it at the point in time. We have since mentored people, and we now have a second group in the class of students. I didn't even know what I wanted to say tonight because I'm so passionate about everything related to Little League and especially the Challenger program that I could get angry very, very quickly, and I'm trying to maintain my cool, and I don't want to use teacher voice on all of you. When I pulled out the CROA agreement, one of the things that came to mind is that Celebration Little League is the quiet group. We are the problem solvers. We don't come to CROA and complain. We don't come to anybody else and complain. If there is a problem, we step up and we fix the problem ourselves because it's easier and it gets done faster. When I looked at the CROA agreement from 2003 that has been renewed over and over and over again for the last 18 years, I actually started to laugh because here's what it reads. In exchange for their use, CROA shall maintain baseball and the practice grass fields exhibited in Exhibit A in their current condition. These were prime real estate fields when we first got them. Maintenance includes mowing, edging, maintaining the mounds. Nobody has ever touched those mounds to fix them except the Celebration Board of Directors. Base paths, infields, home plates, bullpen areas, field lighting. We have had lights out for years. Backstops, you all with this agreement have never replaced a backstop ever in the history of Little League. We created them. They weren't even there. Dugouts, fencing, coaches' boxes, poles, tracks, protective screens, field signs, if any.
That's your 3 minutes.
Thank you. Can I just read one thing to you?
Please.
On behalf of the little guy in the back of the room, and the read it to you. That's Frankie Bailey, long-term challenger athlete in my group. There are a few places I go and people I meet, but there are a few people that are friends, true friends to me. Celebration Challenger Baseball is a safe place for me to be the kind of kid I just happen to be. Coach Kathy, Coach Dave, Raul, and the rest of the bunch help us kids with uniqueness when we are feeling down in the dumps. The coaches are fun and silly at times. They help us out if the need should arise. Coaches like these do not come around often. I feel totally blessed, and I think each one of them is amazingly awesome. Celebration Baseball is so important to me because I am becoming a totally new and different me. He goes on for a couple of pages because Frankie likes filler. But here's the end of his story. I cannot wish things to all stay the same way, but I can dream that all adults hear me clearly and what I want to say. I hope to have many more years out on these beautiful fields. They have given me hope and have helped me when I needed to heal. Thank you so much to the Little League Celebration for helping us kids to give us a place where we can be kids just like everyone else. Thanks.
Thanks,
Kathy.
Kathy. Kathy, can you do me a favor? Can you forward that if that's in email format? If you can forward that, I'd like to have a copy of that. Thank you. Do we want to do board comments on these as we go?
I do.
Do you? Okay.
I do on
Sure.
that. When we, at the last CCDD meeting, I think it was pretty obvious.
There.
I can talk louder. Would that help?
You need mics. The mic. Just put the mic here.
Right in your face.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, that's better.
There you
I
go.
didn't realize I'm used to the other mics. So at the last CCDD meeting,
Are you talking to them?
geez, can't make anyone happier. Okay, here we go. At the last CCDD meeting, we did talk about baseball. Baseball is an integral part of this planet because we can't take away baseball, period. I think that was unanimous and something like that. So that's why we have a joint meeting to discuss this, if there's interest in all this. But we can't build anything unless we decide where we can enhance baseball. I think that was unanimous in that. So we are very passionate about it. I think we drive by and see everybody playing baseball, and that's part of our community. So there is no fear about, oh, if we build this, we're getting rid of baseball. That was never the equation. So I just want to be very clear about that.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, no, Greg Filak with CDD. To echo Tom's comment, Kathy, I mean, that was our workshop that we had, it was a CDD workshop about 3 or 4 weeks ago. That was my opening comment, talking about specifically the option of the lot out here that CDD's been looking at. I think the first thing I said was, I'm not entertaining any plan that doesn't have a plan for where baseball goes, and it's not a two-phase thing. Baseball has to be built in order for us to go on that field. So I mean, that there will not be anything that I would support them at having any sort of gap in service and what needs to be provided for the baseball league.
And Greg and I had a short conversation before as well. And I said, first we have to find a home should that plan go into fruition, then we have to find a place for baseball first and then move on. So I think we all agree.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
All right.
Next we have Margaret Couple.
Hi, my name is Margaret Capola. I live in Lake. We've recently gone through everyone in the neighborhood is going through cleaning up the different infractions that they might have had. The thing that they didn't do is look in the common areas of the whole Spring Lake area. And I have pictures here of things in the street that are broken, the irrigation systems, the water's pouring out, the pond aeration is terrible. It smells, it looks horrible when you walk there. Some of the common areas with they don't clean them and they should be cleaned. It just, the whole area. I've lived there 8 years now and it has gotten worse and worse. I understand everybody has problems and difficulties. And we've been through hard times between COVID and people weren't keeping up with things. But I think that there are several issues. You could see this goes, I don't know if you can see the picture. This goes on every night on Resolute Street. It's one of those, the water things, the tube things. It just blows up every night. Gallons and gallons of water wasted. I'm sure somebody's paying the bill. It's probably me and all of you who pay for this, but these are the kind of things that go on. And I just would like it to be reflected that maybe someone should come and inspect the common areas and see what goes on. Celebration is a beautiful town. Spring Lake is part of that town. And I think if you would come over someday, I see a couple of my neighbors here, they would probably tell you the same thing. Gary is always out there taking care of his house and doing what he needs to do, but it needs to be addressed. And I would appreciate it if maybe you would. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to leave that picture behind, Kathleen?
I have a couple of them.
Thank you for that.
Well, it's not good, but good.
Well, yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
You might
It
be
goes on every night.
Right.
And this is all by the pool. And, you know, these are all, that's the pond and that's a good day. And and there are odors and smells and all sorts of things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your turn. Next was Smithy Sipes.
I got tons of things to talk about, but two that are on the meeting agenda tonight. One, incorporating the town. Don't do it. We do not have the revenue to incorporate the town. We just don't have the tax money for it. Two, the community center. I want to know what a community center is. So I think we need to define what that is. Is it racquetball courts and basketball courts and swimming pools? Is it a glorified VFW with just a bunch of rooms? Like, what is a community center to this town? And I think there needs to be a survey sent out so we know what residents want, because everybody wants a community center, but everybody probably has a different idea of what that is. So I think we need to define that moving forward. Yes, we need a building. Let's define what it is. Outside of that, I think you need to think about the insurance, the maintenance, the labor it costs to be in a community center, and think about combining that with the 851 building, wherever that is, so that it's the same labor, the same maintenance, everything. So we're not paying twice for everything. So maybe that goes next door. Maybe that goes on where the baseball fields are now, and you move those fields out to behind the soccer fields on lot F, where all the other fields are, because there's already parking there. There's already bathrooms there. Everything could move out there and be easier, and this could still be centralized in town. Just a couple thoughts. So that's it for tonight.
Thank you. Thanks. That was all we had for public comments in the room. Were there any online, Lauren? I'm sorry. Oh, Alec.
Oh.
Alec, come on up.
You didn't check the box. Yes, you did. Bye.
Alec Ross, 952 Starling Drive, current president for Celebration Little League. And Kathy's been a mentor the last 3 years that I've been privileged to lead the group. So I won't go into what Kathy shared, but I will challenge this group, right? So whichever direction we go, we have to do it together. And so I think that there's a lot in this community that everybody's looking for, and that has to be done with all the resources that we have in town together. That's what Little League is, right? Many of you have been out to our opening day. We bring everybody that we can that wants to participate together because we're community, right? Veterans Club, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, Sheriff's Department, the high school choir sings the national anthem, right? We're all about the community, and that means we're together. So we've seen a couple and been in a couple early conversations. We are 100% supportive of whatever the plan is when baseball goes first. And we believe that there's direction for that to happen. So we support that and we'll continue the dialogue. Thanks.
Thank you. There another comment from the audience?
You can just state your name and address for us.
Yeah, Richard Quinn, 1007 Fairfield Court. Just as a very quick point of reference. Back when we were discussing and debating and looking at whether or not we were going to put a cut through between Celebration Boulevard and Celebration Boulevard, and the county ultimately decided to close it off and put a library at one end, which gave us access for the sports complex. At the other end of that property, what was originally intended for the other end of the property, the head end of the property at the intersection of Celebration Boulevard and Celebration Avenue, is about 2.2 acres worth of developable land that was originally intended to be the signature town hall community center of Celebration. So when you're looking at space for Celebration, I think you still need to look at the head end at Celebration Boulevard and Celebration Avenue, where North Village comes into Celebration Avenue, as another possible place to put a signature building for the town. That was in the plans back in 2004, 2005, 2006. I think it still needs to be considered as a potential resource for where you want to put a community center, and that would preserve the baseball fields where they are now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the room? Anybody online?
No, I don't see anybody's hand up. Okay.
Darrell? So what I thought we may do, just to kind of kick open the conversation a little bit is, as I mentioned, CDD had a workshop on this about a month ago, where I had put together some slides analyzing what were the open lots in town, what possibilities there may be, not trying to define, what rooms are going where or anything else. Just, hey, as we take a look at developing big opportunities for the town, where those might come up. We had a good 2-hour discussion on that. We talked a bit on sort of CDD in state law, their authority to do things, compared to what Celebration CDD has done for the community over time. And really taking a look just from our board's perspective, what are we doing to meet the needs of the community beyond what we have traditionally done? The CDD in my view, in history, the Celebration CDD, and I'm not saying this is good or bad, it just is what it is. We've been largely focused on infrastructure over the years. It's, what people are used to from us is the sidewalks, the ponds, the alleyways, the lights, things like that. As I started to look at this discussion, there were a lot of opportunities for us to support the community in other ways. Because we are a public governmental board, we do have the ability to do bonds. We do have the ability to do some construction of facilities and amenities that are a little bit different than how other governmental boards like a county or municipality may do those. So we took a look through some of those different options. I got the slide deck, Angel, if you can pull up. I really just want to hit on, I think, a few of the slides here. Slide 14.
Can't pull it. It would email it to me. I emailed it to Mrs. Swisher, and I think Lauren, you were copied on it. When I sent over the agenda, there was a slide deck with it.
I'll forward it over right now, Lauren.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
can't.
that's okay.
That would be your first mistake.
I can't pull
Who's
it.
gonna tap dance on the interim while we do this?
Nope, that's all right. Electrons move fast. On its way. So really what I wanted to, I think, and again, with kind of the consent of both the boards here, I figured we'd start first just by doing a quick recap of what our board had discussed about a month ago. Just to hit some of the highlights. We did look at about 10 different plots of land. I don't think need to do that. But I think hit on some of the highlights. give you guys a little bit of a status check as to where we're at, which honestly isn't very far. We've had some initial conversations here. And then I think kind of open it really for a dialogue. You guys obviously have a lot of considerations of what you're looking at with master plans and 851 and everything else, and just seeing if there's some natural places where for the community, both of us find some convergence points. I'll pause there and see if anybody's got any different thoughts on how to kind of flow this from either board.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
I have one question. Maybe we can have Jan. Thank you. Maybe go over some of the clarifications of what the CCD can or can't do.
That was slide 15.
Okay.
Once I get the slides up, then I'll actually ask Jan to
Oh,
brief
great,
those so we
very
can
much.
get them on the screen.
Do you have, on a slide that talks about, I think there's some conflation with what happened with CROA and the county? And that this is good, if CCDD builds something.
You're talking about as far as what happened with the soccer fields a few years ago.
Yeah, yeah. And if CCD builds something, who has access to it?
Okay. So let me, while Lauren's loading that up, Jan, do you want to talk maybe a little bit about, I know we've hit on some of these before, but just generally the authority of bonding, the authority of CDD to do some restrictions on access, some of the common questions that we've gotten so far. You want to maybe hit some of those to start?
Sure. Because the CDD is a government, it can issue tax exempt bonds, which is a much easier process than CROA or CDD getting a loan. There's no guarantees, there's no asset requirements, that sort of thing. The CDD assets are backed by the assessments that are on your tax bill. So from the standpoint of issuing bonds, it's not a tough process. It's fairly quick. And the CDD issues those at a tax exempt rate, so there's a market for those. There's underwriters that are specialized in CDD bonds that would look at the type of facility, and then they look at the creditworthiness of the folks in Celebration to be able to pay it. And with the good reputation Celebration has, that would probably be a fairly easy give to have bonds issued. Because they are public bonds and tax exempt bonds, and the CDD is a government, public access is required, and that's the question we always get. However, everyone that's a landowner in Celebration already pays assessments. So the landowners will be able to use the facility at no charge or at a reasonable rate if there's some specialized facilities that we have to charge for. But those that don't live or don't own property in Celebration, they would have to pay an outside user fee. And it's very common, almost all the CDDs, Angel can attest to that, to set a fee for outside users. And it's usually based on the amount that folks are paying for a facility. So if everyone here was paying, and I'm just pulling a number, say $150 a year of your assessment was based on this, then an outside user would have to pay that amount. So it's sometimes based on the amount of operations and maintenance, the amount of debt, or in case of rentals, it was beyond what the cost is for the CDD to clean up after, the cost of space, air conditioning. So as long as there's a reasonable basis, you can set fees for outside users. And I know that's one of the biggest questions people always have when they hear government outside users. Does that mean everybody can come walk in? It's like, no, they have to be able to pay an equivalent amount to what you all are paying as residents.
And I think too on that, Jim, was I know with the county, they were going to advertise the soccer fields as part of the county Parks and Rec map. We would not be doing that. It's not advertised now. It's not to say it's hidden from anybody, but we're not going to go out and publicize it.
Right. Yep.
So
Could you explain, Jan, how the rooms would be divided up? Like how many private businesses could rent space in there versus, since it's
That's a very good question. If the CDD built it on its own, there is a maximum 10% private use, which means rentals to outside uses can be limited at 10%. So that means you can only have certain private uses. If CROA wanted to rent an office or two, it would be that much. If we came to some kind of agreement between CROA and the CDD where there were going to be a joint building, there's some tax mechanisms, you'd have to jump through some hoops, but we could do a public-private partnership where a portion, say, CROA paid 1/3, the CDD paid 2/3, CROA would use 1/3 of the building, and we'd have to apportion it and have tax lawyers give their opinions on how to do that, but that is possible to set something up that way.
maybe if I could just, now that Lauren's got the setup over here. So this was from our slides. So the authority of CDDs in community assets, and this is coming straight from Florida statute, Highlighted up there, the CDDs have the authority to plan, establish, acquire, construct, or reconstruct, large, extend, equip, operate, and maintain facilities for parks and rec, for indoor recreational, cultural, and educational uses, as well as the bonding piece on the bottom there that we do have the authority to issue bonds. It goes back to my comment before. Traditionally, our CDD has not done that just because historically CROA has done most of the parks and rec amenities. Large part of that, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, historical historians here, is we were given CDD was transferred all of the essentially non-usable land in the community. A lot of your conservation areas, woodlines, things like that. Just that from the development plan, the developer had given all that to CROA to be able to do it. So it doesn't remove our authority. We just didn't have the land to do some of those things. So when we talk about what the Celebration CDD could do, that's certainly within the scope from Florida law. So any questions on that one? I know that's a bit of a paradigm shift from what's happened in the past, but any thoughts on that? On the next slide, really kind of, again, summarizes some of these. We've taken a bit of a limited support role. The last one I can think of that from the CDD side, we had supported from an infrastructure and amenity side was in the civic corridor. Actually, the roadway going out there, we were a part of that as far as the land transference and development of that roadway that goes back to the fields back behind the library.
We paid for that though, didn't we? Okay, out of pocket.
Portion of it. Yeah.
I have a question for Jan. So what leeway does CCDD have in terms of determining what an outside person would pay to do this?
It's fairly broad. It's usually an analysis done by the assessment methodology person, which is often the district manager's financial folks, to look at a reasonable cost for what the cost is involved and how it, portrays out. What the cost is.
There's nothing confining you to
No.
make it the exact amount that a homeowner is paying,
No,
correct?
there's not.
Okay, thank you.
Jan, I have a question.
Typically what we've done.
On the, basically, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're describing a revenue type bond.
Yes.
What if the revenue doesn't meet the payments on the bond?
The revenue would be, the amount of the bonds would be structured to match the revenue stream.
The anticipated revenue.
Well, because it's collected on the tax roll, it's collected through tax certificates.
Okay.
So that,
Either way, we get it.
that's where the advantage comes to the CCDD over CROA, in that we have that automatic mechanism, and that's what makes bonds fairly easily marketed, because there's almost a guaranteed stream with tax certificates.
Angel, to Jim's earlier question, have there been other methodologies you've used to determine those, or Jan, either for you as well?
Determine non-resident.
Non-residential
fees.
payment, yeah, fee
Yes,
structures.
And again, as Jan stated, there's many ways to come up with those. A lot of times, because maintenance and everything is incorporated into that, typically we've seen a lot where it is set at the highest assessment of the community. So let's say, I'm just throwing a number out there, the highest assessment is $1,500 a year. That's what we would charge a non-resident to be able to use the facilities. And it may not even be all the facilities. Sometimes it's limited. It's maybe only a pool and a gym, or, there's different ways to do it. So yes.
Okay.
You're not limited to just charge. It has to be reasonable, but you're not limited to what can be charged as a non-resident user fee.
So are there examples of this in other communities or with other CDDs, just out of curiosity, where we've seen it be successful, not successful?
Union is a great example, because they have some private facilities their HOA owns, and they have facilities that the CDD owns. The CDD owns 7 pools. They own one of the largest parks, but some of the other assets are privately owned. And in that case, they set outside user fee, and no one has ever chosen to join.
No one. Okay.
No one.
And that's the same.
Yeah, I can't think of any facilities where anyone has chosen to join from an outside the community.
I think I've had one, and that was in Pasco County. They had a skate park as one of the amenities, and the non-resident user fees were set at the highest assessment level that the resident paid. And we had one in 5 years.
Dave, I know you've done this as well professionally. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I've done this before also. And for those that don't know, I'm Dave Hume. As part of the CDD board. And the CDD that I established and worked under, we had a water park, and the same, like you guys mentioned, the fee was, and here's an important aspect of this, is that we set the fee not on a per usage rate, but on a monthly or an annual rate.
And yeah, usually
Right?
it's
Usually
annual.
annual. So it's not like you can charge somebody $10 to use it for the day. It's not like a gym membership. It's something that's based on assessments and goes for an entire allotment of time.
And you have the discretion to do it other ways. If, for example, there's something you want to encourage outside people to use for a certain sport or event, then you could have a daily fee. But most of the time, there is an annual fee. And usually it's cost prohibitive or location prohibitive. There's not many people that want to pay for a year. Like Celebration's a great example, to have to drive in and park.
So kind of on the question of the how, those were the few slides that had come through. The other one was really summarizing the low study, or if you can go to slide 14. Again, this was a slide deck I pulled together for the workshop, and I really used as a basis for it the past 3 studies that CROA has done, 2010, 2015, and 2019. What I found that was interesting as I reviewed them is there were about 90% consistency in the themes. The only major differences I saw of amenities not being requested were ones that over time actually had been addressed. So like in 2010, they requested the dog park, but the 2015 one obviously wasn't. Other than that, again, you can go through the slides. I'm not going to hit too many of them here, or really any of them here, unless there's specific questions. But what we did find was the consistency of themes between the 3 of them, particularly in the lowest one and the 2019 one is one I really focused a lot of the research statistics we've gone through, because it was, I felt the best put together as an independent study that I think or 6 or 8 months to get that together. So I think it really provided a lot of the earlier comment from the public, as far as, hey, survey data for what the community is looking for. I think there was some well substantiated data there that whether we do another survey, don't do another survey, whatever, I really, my point to my board was I feel like we've got a solid starting point to say, what wants to be built. I think there's already a framework for a lot of that in terms of what might go into a community center. The second half of the study, or the last part of the study, looked at the funding aspects of it. And that's what I've always seen as sort of the stumbling block is time and again, the analysis has been done on what to build, but there really wasn't a fleshed out plan on how to build it, really from a financing perspective. So what I highlighted in here was, the comments from the researcher was, and again, I'm not going to read, you can see up there, pull a copy of the presentation from our last workshop. But really what it talks about is that CROA needed to look for some outside funding, just based on the way revenue streams are structured today, the amount of assessments that are coming in, the rate of those assessments, to be able to build something as a capital project like this, of this size and magnitude, just wasn't feasible within the way they're structured. So that's where it looks at, it mentions specifically the CDD, also Osceola County School Board, the county, other stakeholders that may be able to support that. So that's where, again, in my mind, the relevancy for this from a CDD perspective, because we are also a community focused board that does have some of the authorities to do these things either jointly with CROA or on our own, whichever way it ends up going. I think there's a lot of relevancy for some of the material that was in here. So any comments or questions on that one?
Yes.
Yep.
The first question is, can this be posted on your website? So
Already is.
is it where we're at, just so people can get to it easily? Do you know?
If you
I just want,
if you look in the meetings,
we're interested in seeing more of what you presented.
Yes.
And you didn't know.
it was the August workshop. It's in, I think, the meetings tab on our
Okay.
website,
CCD website.
on the CCD website.
And you guys can send it all to you.
Yeah. So
No, I'm sorry.
when you talked about like the load study and things like that, you said there's work that's already been done. So maybe you haven't made this decision as a board. Maybe this is just your personal opinion or whatever. I don't know. But is that something that you guys are committed to use as a basis for the work?
So I'd say as the opening comment, our board hasn't voted on anything. We haven't made any decisions. We had a workshop where it was simply discussed. My opinion is, and certainly open it up to the other five, I'll start, is 100%. I mean, you know, the reality, despite the fact that you guys are a private HOA board, we're a public governmental board. We both serve the same community. We both serve the same constituents. We both have the same residents saying the same things. They're just saying it to one board instead of the other. So I don't think the question of what to build would necessarily change if they're talking to you or if they're talking to us. They're going to look for the same things. How we might implement that might be different, but I think the underlying data on, you know, and it wasn't just surveys from the community that the Lowe study did. That was a key piece of it. It also looked at the boards themselves, or actually the CROA board itself. I know it surveyed, I think, 19 different partner groups and civic organizations between sports clubs and the foundation and all sorts of other groups and all that. So it really did, in my mind, I think took a very good cross-section of the community to say, hey, holistically, what is it that we as a community want? So certainly I'll turn to the rest, but yes.
Thank you.
And then I think what we should do is make it public about how much it would cost. You know, we do have a Facebook page, you know, that might be something. We want to put this on our Facebook page along with what we think that of the estimate of what it would cost the residents additionally per year for this. You know, just give them all the information and make it as public as possible.
Well, I've found that at least this present CCD board is very good at being transparent. I don't have any concerns around as you move forward, whether there'll be a lack of visibility to these decisions, to the numbers, anything like that. Again, no, I want to just repeat what Greg said. No decisions have been made by either board on this. This is to get the community involved. It's to talk through possible solutions and think about next steps. Is that accurate?
Yeah. And I mean, and tonight in particular, like I said, I just want to give you guys a summary and then turn it to you to see, you know, what your thoughts are from there. The last thing that I highlighted in the presentation was, again, looking through the, I think it was 8 or 9 different lots. So just summarizing them, it was Stetson, Kate Field over here, the theater downtown, the lot mentioned by the gentleman earlier down at the end, Civic Corridor back past the soccer fields, the wooded area there. Lots B and D on the Civic Corridor, and there were 3 or 4 separate lots that are still left on Celebration Boulevard. We looked through all those. All of them, obviously, we went through some pluses and minuses on them. I think where, and again, certainly I want to summarize for the board, where it landed for me at the top of the list was a discussion with the school board about the lot right next door with the K-8 field. Between the location and some willingness from the school district and some preliminary conversations to possibly even get into a joint use agreement, it just seemed like a natural one to start. Again, not that we'd be committed to it, but coming out of our workshop, I did have some permissions from our board to start engaging the school district on that and seeing what their thoughts were. So again, we looked at between all the different lands. I think in my mind, there were probably 2 or 3 that were just non-starters. They just for you know, to any concept of what a community center might be based on some of the Lowe study data and the previous studies of things that were looked for. Some of those just didn't lend themselves towards it, but I think there are a few options that are on there. That one was certainly at the top of my list to get out on my board and say, any thoughts there about other lots or alternatives?
I'll echo that. And the other part about that, going full circle to our original comments about what happens to baseball, because that's the obviously next question. If you decide to put something else there, where does baseball go? So that is where our board is coming with questions, because we're not familiar with what CROA property, what their function, what the intent is, and what is developable in some of these areas.
So, yeah, I think that's the timeline is really important because we have been given, CROA has been given 90 days notice in our contract to be able to use that field. And so there's been concern on our board. I'm sure you can speak for your board, but there's been concern on our board that that doesn't even give us time to finish out the season. So I don't know if you, in your discussions with them, that's come up, how that's going to happen, you know, as opposed to them having to, for a month or 2 months or who knows how long, be able to have to negotiate directly with the school board.
If you owned it, if you ended up buying it,
Mhm.
then they would have to schedule through you until something else was found.
So,
Yes, no, maybe?
so the conversations we've had with them have not been tied at all to the fact that the contract was being terminated. Ours was more a longer term look, you know, from Jan and Angel's perspective when we had our workshop. I mean, for us to go through this process at a decent clip, Jane, you said probably about 18 to 24 months just before we get to a bond, and probably another 12 to 18 months of construction, swagging.
And that's if everything goes well.
You know, so you're looking on the short end, 2 to 3 years here if everything marches along quickly. So, you know, in the short term, I don't think there's anything that we're looking at that would immediately address the question with Celebration Little League out on those fields. I think that's still something that between Little League and you guys in the school district, you know, have to work out in the short term. I think in the long term, though, certainly is.
Sorry,
Yeah.
just to clarify, so we've gotten an email notice from the school board attorney warning us that there's going to be a 90-day notice.
Okay.
But we're not yet on the 90-day notice clock.
Okay.
We don't know when that's going to happen. I know Lauren has talked to and brought in school board member Terry Castillo. We're trying to set up something with the superintendent to try to push that back to make sure that the season is completed before there's any change in use and control.
Okay.
You know why they're doing it now? What motivated this?
So I'm not. Nope. Okay, so we had a discussion with the school board attorney about two issues. One was the traffic flow that was coming past town hall, and then associated with that, there were some questions about access and maintenance to the ballpark that's behind the fence, because we have a new school principal. And so there were some questions and issues that came up also with use of CROA's online scheduling system versus using theirs. And I think there was some frustration. And as a result, there were some discussions about possibly canceling the contract, which has been in place for a number of years. As far as specifics, I didn't get identifiable specifics from the school board attorney. I just got some general comments that they're looking at canceling the contract and giving me the warning that we might get a 90-day notice. My response to them was, before you do anything, talk to us. And then we felt like through Lauren's initiative, hey, let's bring in the school board member that represents the celebration area to make sure that we're speaking all together, that wait a second, let's make intelligent, well-informed decisions that may protect the season.
Do you think your inquiries could have had an impact on that? On them wanting to?
There was nothing from us that we put out. I mean, it doesn't influence one way or the other if we decide to move forward on that or not. It doesn't impact that negatively or positively one way or the other. It really doesn't make a difference. So, I mean, what may have gone in the school board's mind, I don't know, but it certainly was nothing from our perspective. It doesn't make a difference to us. If they're going to transfer or sell us the land, that's going to be a process that's going to take months, and really I think is independent of whatever the current agreement is you guys have with them.
Tom, I have one
I'll
more
also
question.
note too that the school district said there's nothing preventing Little League from working with the school directly to schedule through them once the contract with CROA was terminated. I mean, the contract with CROA just allows us to work directly, really control what's going on in those fields and maintain them. But it doesn't prevent Little League from using the fields after we've done maintaining.
School owns the street,
The school owns this street, yeah, the
Right.
access road.
so that would be disposed of as well, taking away our access to our own parking lot.
Well, you'd have a easement by way of necessity.
So we would keep an easement.
You would keep an easement because it's necessary to access a public road. But you're right that the road is controlled. It's owned and controlled by the school board at this point, so.
And the initial discussion we had with them was more focused on the field itself. They had mentioned as part of the conversation that they may be interested, hey, if they were to transfer or sell us the grass area, the field, to also do the road. But again, no decisions were made on that. It was simply commentary that, hey, it's something they could consider that would be in there. So that's where we've left it.
Thank you, Lauren. It's getting quiet. Are we doing board comments, or are you just are you still discussing your plan?
I mean, I guess at this point, I'm just kind of going along until making sure you guys have information to sort of feed what you guys need for a discussion on your side.
Okay, so can I ask a couple of questions?
Sure.
Then me.
Okay. How many stories is this building gonna be that's going over here?
No idea.
Ballpark.
No idea. We haven't talked requirements on it. Again, I mean, to the point before of understanding what we're gonna put into the building, we haven't gotten that far yet. It's
Can we
simply,
keep comments from the audience at a,
I didn't hear any.
while we're asking questions, please?
Sure.
Thank you. So you're not sure how many stories this building would be? One of the residents committee said we need a master plan. We still don't have a master plan. We had a call for volunteers to the master plan advisory group. I think we have 11 applicants, and I spoke to a couple of people saying, why isn't your name, why haven't you applied? Well, the requirements ask that you're either a lawyer or an architect or whatever. So we're at a standstill right now with 11 applicants. And I find as a resident that if I want to join this advisory group and I don't have these qualifications, why is what I have to say any different than somebody with, let me finish, Jim, because I know you're going to say something. So I think it's important for the community to know that your voice is valued. If you want to apply for this advisory group, please do. Because like I said, we only have 11 applicants. Now, you want to put this building on this baseball field. That's one of them. During the whole lawn sports debacle, I'll say, we can't use green space. That's green space. Why are you going to put something on green space? This is behind heritage. And I'm talking regardless who owns what. We had the whole thing with Lot D. We want an amenity center put on Lot D before we put anything else there, but we need a master plan. So we don't have a master plan in place yet for the residents to decide what they would like to put in whatever we're going to build. What if, like, you take Lot D and rent it from us and put your athletic building down there? Let us keep the A51 building and build a civic center and leave the baseball fields the way they are, because those baseball fields are part of our history. And to rip them up and put a building there now and add more traffic to Celebration Avenue besides school traffic for a building now that's going to bring in a lot of people in this small area, I'm not sure the people on Starling or Greenbrier or Lake Evelyn, and there's residents that are going to want to look at this big building that's butt right up to our school. So I don't know. Lot D, everybody said, we want an amenity center. We want an amenity center. Do something with Lot D. Take it, rent it, build something, go at it. And then let us take care of the A51 building and build when we discuss and agree on which to go in this building as our community center now. The meeting space, seniors, children, teens, whatever. Put a couple of floors on the back, but to build a building on those baseball fields is going to be ugly. That's my opinion. Jim had to interrupt me.
I was just saying your first point is better discussed on the CROA board, but you were setting it up for the second point. So
Thank you.
thanks.
So here, as we all have been thinking about this a lot. And to Smithy's point, wherever he, but there, hi. In my mind, there's a difference between a recreation center and an amenity center. If it were up to me, if I was the only voice, I would keep this as the amenity center. An amenity center usually has management facilities, banquet rooms, computer centers, multi-purpose halls. Whereas a recreation center is either a government agency, or you could move your office there, I guess, if you wanted, but you already have a nice space. Sports are played and things like that. CROA has enough money to repair this building at the very least. We have enough cash. For a little bit more, we can add a second story back on the, where the activities room is, that bar room over there, a second story, and bump it out a little bit. Probably wouldn't have enough to do that all at the same time, but we could at least get this building operational again. And then maybe, keep meeting rooms. Maybe we'll get a couple more smaller conference rooms out of it. My thought would be to have a teen center here, because I go to the tavern every Friday night and all those kids get out of school and they go and hang around at Starbucks. If we gave them a room here, that would be their room where they could come and hang out. Maybe on Friday nights, have a food truck here, that sells whatever it is kids like to eat, maybe burgers one week and tacos another week or whatever. And they would have a place to gather. And then, I don't know, maybe a seniors, I don't even know what that is, but a senior center is part of the building. And then you guys do you. You decide where you would like to put in a recreation center. If it's going to have basketball, indoor tennis courts, if you can do that. I guess you can, depending on how big the room is. We would, entertain either leasing the land to you on Lot D or selling it to you, if that's what you would prefer. And then that would just be a whole recreation corridor. Now, blue sky, I'd love to be able to figure out how to get this building with no cost to CROA. The Stetson building. Yeah. And use it as an amenity center and partner programs. If we go, because as I recall from your meeting, your first choice would be to put something here. Like with the, I think you said basketball courts and stuff like that. And then you said our offices could rent space there. But then I said, what about our partner programs? So we would lose the revenue from the partner programs, correct? If we moved into your building and we didn't have any other space?
If we were to build a community center and you guys didn't rebuild 851, then any activities that went on there would become both revenue and cost to the CDD.
Yeah. So we would lose all of our partner program income if we went and did there. That's why I think that, we could make this an amenity center and then maybe add on to it eventually, because there is room and the builder said we could do it, and then let them, have at it with a recreation center to end all recreation centers.
And make it accessible with an elevator so that
Of course, you have to.
Yeah.
handicap accessible.
Charles?
So can we?
Sure.
Go.
So
All of these are good examples of, everyone's aware that CROA is working towards developing a master plan advisory group. And all of these are good examples of why I think that needs to continue and be pursued before we can even, I don't want to say give an answer or have a conversation about this, because I don't believe that CROA knows what the community wants, because we haven't done this survey and this study with the current residents based on the current conditions of our assets, like this building and the lots that we have. And so everything that Celia said, everything that Cindy said, is all of these things are in play, and everything that you're bringing is also in play. But I don't believe that CROA as a board can make that decision. We need to follow through with this, with these. We have 11 candidates now. I also agree, not related to this meeting, anyone who wants to be involved should apply. I agree.
And when's the cutoff?
Friday.
So if you want to apply, please apply. It's important to get your feedback.
It is important for anyone who wants to apply so we can look at everyone and how everything fits. But I think we need to appoint that group so that we as CROA are advised what the residents want, so we know how to make that work with what CDD can assist with, can offer, can manage, can do. I think that for us needs to come first. That's my opinion.
Charles, you're next, I think.
There was one thing in particular that you said, you do you. And I think that's a dangerous comment to make here.
Well, I just meant that.
I know, but the purpose of this meeting is to have a partnership and to see if we can try to work
Right,
together.
right.
And I think if we get into the you do you mentality, we've already lost that. And I think that's where we need to.
I apologize. I didn't mean any of
Well,
that, but I meant,
no.
but did you understand what I meant? Okay.
Yes, I think we.
Touchy.
No, it's not.
No, I didn't.
Nope.
I think it has to do with the message that CROA is the CROA board is creating about working together with CCDD.
Yeah,
And when you say you do you, some people can interpret that as leave us alone,
I think
as
that,
opposed to working together.
I think that, but also we're not designed for large capital projects. We're not designed financially, project management wise, staff wise. I mean, CDD has the financial backing. They have the resources. They have the capabilities. We can't put a playground up. That's the reality. We can't put a playground up. So I think for us to not want to work with CDD, and I'm not saying that we're not doing that right now, but we need to embrace what they're.
Well, yeah, that's why I offered our land.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're not gonna resolve this,
Yeah.
but, I have a comment to your comment,
Sure.
Cindy. We do actually have the money in the capital fund to cover the estimate that we have so far of what it's gonna cost to fix this building. But just because we can do a thing doesn't mean we should do a thing. So I don't think just because we have the money, we should spend it on this. I'm hoping that we're gonna evaluate that from a logical, value-based decision and not just say, oh, we have the money, let's just put it in there and get it fixed.
Here's the other part of that, Jim. We can get this building, if my, and Jared, you correct me if your recollection is different. I believe that this, we learned in our last meeting that we had with certain of those folks that we could repair this building in like a year and a half. Their timeline is 3 years plus. So then do we let this building sit here and rot for those years and not be able to use it? That's the other thing.
Well, I think what we're doing, just one second. I think what you're doing there is you're like presupposing what's going to happen. I don't want to presuppose that they're going to do this and we're going to do that. I want to talk about how we can work together. So go ahead.
Well, I understand that, but that's a fact, is it not? That for whatever if we decide to do it together with a joint where you put out the bond and all this kind of stuff, when you build the building and we move in there and all this kind of stuff, you just said it's going to take
2 to 3 years.
There's definitely a process.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
You haven't done this before, so I'm gonna give them.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not going to happen in a year, but it could happen in 2. So I don't think we should, I don't think we should settle on any specific facts yet, is my point. Right? Let's just talk about how we can work together.
Oh, that's true, but I believe I heard you say 2 years, just put everything in place, another year and a half to build. That's 3.5 years. I believe that's said at the
Maybe,
workshop.
but you don't know until you know the scope.
Correct.
If you build, 1,000 square foot hut, we can do that in a couple months.
Right.
Build a 4th story, 10,000 square foot monstrosity of all these other things can take a lot longer. We don't know at this point. So that's the discovery process we're going through now.
That's another good justification for a master plan advisory group to help us form that out. I think both of us need this to figure out what we need to do. Maybe we do need to just repair this building, and Cindy is right. We don't know that because we haven't done a study of what the community wants. We're making decisions here as what do we want to do here? Do we want to give you this land here? We'll give you this lot and you go build what you want to build. There's more people out there than there are up here that need, that's really where our duty, well, CROA's duty is to the residents. And so I don't think we can just make that decision. We need to form this group, give them direction as to what we're looking for, and then execute that because that's the will of the residents. Now, I will say, CROA has not done that good in the history of CROA. So that is true. We need to be diligent on this and work together on that. It's making sure that
That's good. Just clarification, not good on what? Following through on things?
putting together a group and then
And then doing something about it afterwards? Yeah, okay.
I don't know did somebody want to talk? Okay.
Go ahead. We'll let you talk.
So did everybody get a chance to read the presentation that CC did on the workshop?
I watched it.
Okay. Did everybody
I
see
did
that?
not.
Okay. So there's an important piece in there. It takes into consideration every master plan committee that's ever been done in Celebration. Almost guaranteed that if you put the master plan committee together, you probably hit about 90 to 95% of what's already been done. I'm just saying. There could be some tweaks, right? There's no pickleball in the first 2, there is on 30. But you kind of can go ahead and see where all that is. You know, I say that because what happens is, and Jared, to your point, we do these committees look at these wonderful plants and then they're gone. Right?
Well,
Which
maybe
is
we'll
why,
make
which is why we have these empty lots in all these different places, because it, you know, the vision and the partnership and everything else just wasn't there.
I agree. And I didn't get to finish my thought. I was gonna say, we need to do that differently and we need to do that better. Because the one thing, while the CROA Master Plan Advisory Group is going to use all of that reference material from the past studies, the one thing that no one has ever dealt with before is the availability of these lots here now, and this building being close to being condemned. This building was never something that needed to be dealt with. It just was here and existed. So there are a lot of big variables that now this new advisory group has to deal with. So I'm not going to say a million times tonight, we need to do the master plan advisory group, but I will say for the last time, before we do anything, I believe we need to do the master plan advisory group.
I almost think that I remember
disagree.
in the workshop
Bill,
that, I'm
this
sorry.
building is not close to
Sorry.
condemned.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, building is not close to being condemned. It needs work, but it's not that bad.
You don't think the $2 million repair or close to a $2 million repair is not that bad?
I do not think so, no.
Huh.
Huh.
That's interesting,
But
because you were the one who said it would be no more than $500,000 to
No, I
repair
did
this
not.
until we got that number.
I
You
did
told,
not say that.
you said that to me personally. You said it in multiple meetings. I'll go back and find it.
Please do,
Okay, I will.
but I'm sure I qualify.
Yeah, you give us something to say something.
Thank you, Charles. I appreciate it.
No, I forgot.
But you can at least look at me when you do that.
Cindy, do you have something to say?
I don't remember what it was now. Thank you very much. Oh, I know. I almost think I remember, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, that during your workshop, somebody said, we don't need to poll the community as to what they want. We all know what they want based on these three things.
Based on,
Based on the different
based on
reports.
Well, based on several hundred hours of resident work. Yes. It's already been done. It really has been. The evaluation, I mean, Greg did the evaluation of every empty space. When we have the facts right now.
Well,
You
and
know,
that's,
I'm just saying that because at this point, I'm not saying make a decision today because we're in discovery phase, seeing if this is something we want to do. But I just think it's important to note that a lot of resident work has already been done.
Wait, Greg, what work did you do?
so in the, if you go
Yeah.
through the report, I looked through all the open lots that are available. And that was what we discussed in our workshop.
Did you take the packet from the advisory group from Celebration Hall and all their recommendations?
Yeah, that was a big piece of it.
And how pretty useless lot D, lot F is to the community?
So, I mean, so let's talk, so I want to get to lot F, but I wanted,
Mhm.
there's been a common thread between the past 5 minutes of comments, and I just want to say from our side, I'm going to invoke what I'm going to forever now call the Tom Hall rule. And the Tom Hall rule is, as a community, our two boards are all funded by the same constituents. So it's not a yours, mine, and theirs. When we talk about, and I realize there is history of this, where I think, Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, I think CDD sold CROA the land or vice versa, one of,
No.
other way around. Okay.
No. PCC gave us the land.
No, I'm talking about for the road, where it was like a $250,000 charge for the,
We paid somebody.
Yeah.
CD, $300 and some dollars, $300,000.
Yeah.
They forced.
Yeah. So I will tell you, and again, there are some restrictions, and I always get the laser eyes from my lawyers, so that's okay. That's when I usually look up at the ceiling. There are some restrictions as a governmental board that we cannot give away things for free, whether that's space in a building or access to a building or land or assets or anything else. We have to go on fair market value perspectives. Even when we had the GoGov discussion before, the ability for us to give you the 4 or 5 year credit was based on some historical information there that we, otherwise we wouldn't have been able to do that. Other than that, though, it's certainly my position. These are community dollars. So when we start talking about, I could charge you for this and I could charge you for that, the analogy I always say is stand up, put your hand in 2 pockets, pull a dollar bill out, take it from your right hand, put it in your left hand and stick it back in your left pocket, because that's what you just did. Whether I'm charging you or you're charging me. So I think when it comes to the funding piece of this, looking at it from the eyes of the residents in the Tom Hall rule is that these are all community dollars. These are all community assets, and we're all building it for the community. We are differently structured, differently chartered between our two boards, but at the end of the day, we are here in context of this to look at assets and amenities for the community. So I think that's, and again, 12 board members here, 12 different ways of looking at it, but that's certainly, I think, a sort of a North Star for me is, as I look at this, I don't want us to take a look at charging you guys for something. You know, as an example, somebody had mentioned before, you know, one of the shoot the moon options that could come out. And I really kind of adverse to going too far down the rabbit hole on different options of stuff that could come out. But one that comes up to mind is, you know, if we're to do something with the K-8 field over here, the predicate conversation with the school district, I've talked to the board member and the attorney, and we're still waiting for some information back, but generally the board is on board, the superintendent's on board, the attorney's on board with the idea. They may not even sell us the land. They may give us the land on the idea that there is a joint use agreement between CDD and the school, that if we're to build active sports areas, the school is in a shortage of gym space. So if we were to build a community center, take a fair value assessment of what that land is worth, apply it to the school district as a credit, and say now based on that and fair market value of whatever that gym space may be, that we would take, again, totally pulling things out of the air here. We were to take 50% of the indoor courts and tell the school, you have exclusive access to these courts during school hours, and the community has access to the other half of the courts during school hours. And then outside of school hours, be open to the entire community. The reality is, a lot of the people who are going to use indoor active sports courts are the kids who go to the school, are the same kids that live in our houses. So I think you're going to find there's going to be a lot of alignment there of the same people using those assets. So the school district is really biting on this because they are so short on gym space right now, and they don't have the capital dollars to expand the gym. They don't have the land to expand the gym. And they've already said they don't have use for this space out here because they've never used it from the school perspective. So my appeal to that land is because there is some momentum from the school district to look at possibly giving this over to us. I would extend that, and again, I realize there's some limitations there based on what Jan's saying, but I would extend that conceptually to you guys. So hypothetically, if we were to take a look at all this land over here, and whatever we're going to do there is some sort of building, whatever else that we can put office space in there, that we're open for CROA staff to be able to populate, as well as giving access, obviously, for the community. We could do the same thing here. I think, Jan, kick me under the table if you need to. If you were to give us this land here, what's that?
It's a long table.
Long table.
This thing is just a real hard.
That's why I threw it out. But if, you know, again, hypothetically, if you were to give us this land here that we could use as part of the building, part of the parking, part of whatever, part of the total solution, that we could apply the value of this land that CROA has inherent as a credit for you guys to be able to have the community space or the community center space for offices. If we were to be able to get that far, I would love to see our staff come over and cohabit with you. Now we truly have a town hall. Right now, town hall is CROA. Town hall is not the other boards in town. That's not your fault. It's just how it was designed. But that now brings an added non-quantitative value to the community that anything they need to do, they come into the community center, they come into the town hall, that everybody now is in here shared jointly. So again, I throw that out as one of what I'm sure we could get down the rabbit hole of 50 different ideas. That's just, I think, kind of I won't say the extreme, but the far end of where I hope the vision in here could go of some of the left and right limitations.
Right.
Yep.
I think this would be really a worthwhile conversation to have all this. But I think it would be useful if we had it kind of like between us, what are our next steps up mutually when we leave the room? So it just isn't a great conversation.
Yep.
Like how do we go forward individually and then come back together again?
Well, and Bill, that's the $1 million question, right? I think our intent was, and I appreciate you all reaching out after we had our workshop. Our intent really was, as I said in my email a week or so ago, just to recap for you and recap in front of the community, sort of, I think, where our discussions have been so far, where our thinking is at generally, and throw that out to you guys and say, hey, I think to Charles or Jim's point, you know, where do we go next? Where do you guys go next? And whether you discuss that here or kind of kick that around internally, I think if we can help define the left and right limits of what's in the art of the possible, you guys figure out within those left and right limits what you want to do.
Just for my own personal comment, talk about money, we talk about land, all those usages, which are incredibly important. But I try to keep my eye on the Little League thing, because it's not just Little League program being maintained, it's all the other programs. We need to keep that in our minds as to how do we do all this construction, all this moving around, and still service the programs, all the programs that the community is presently supporting. Part of that's income to us, but it's also a community amenity. And I think planning for that needs to be part of all the planning.
And I agree with you. And I think part of the challenge is, I know certainly from our side of the table, you know, we don't have an executable answer for 2 to 3 years. You know, there's a reality, there's going to be some gaps, there's going to be some challenges. And again, I don't know on your side of the table, I think there's just realities that there's going to be a shortage of space for the foreseeable future. You know, are there ways that we can jointly help hit some short-term targets on that? Unfortunately, we don't own a lot of building space, you know, but I don't know that there's much else we can do with that, but I'm certainly open to some of that discussion as part of the short-term solution.
Did you mention us give you this building?
You could,
Did you say
I
that
think
in
you did.
conversation?
yeah, one
Give you this building?
to give us the land of the building.
Lease it. Like,
Well,
Lease it.
well, so listen, there's 10 different things we could do just in this area here. I mean, you know, one of them is, Cindy's asked the question several times, can CDD fund the repairs to the building? And the answer is yes, comma, if we own the building. It now becomes a CDD owned asset. Again, from a government perspective, we can't do anything for free. Could we do that? Sure. Could you guys give us the land in exchange for a credit? Again, a fair market value credit, whatever this land is assessed worth, no idea. And then we apply that as a credit towards whatever building we may put up. Sure.
We can donate it, I assume. But anything having to do with the value of the building needs a town vote, correct?
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to what Jerry was saying earlier about putting together a committee, getting a good idea of what everybody wants. It's not just finding out or confirming what Tom has already seen in the prior studies, but also getting a buy-in. And I say all that to lead into, if there's going to be transfer of ownership where CROA dedicates or deeds any land to the CCDD, there has to be a membership vote. And it's actually somewhat of a supermajority vote, so it does require a big buy-in from the membership. If it was a lease or a license, which has also been thrown about, then that can be a board decision because the actual ownership is not being conveyed or turned over to a public or quasi-public agency.
So you could do hypothetically a 100-year land lease on one of your assets that we would be able to, and again, I'm looking, Jan,
I would bring you back to the Artisan Park playground when they wanted to lease that for 99 years.
yeah, and that's,
If we could do a long-term ground lease, that's generally bonds.
Yeah, so so whatever detail, I defer to you on what those requirements are. There's a provision in 72309 that talks about making sure the terms are reasonable for anything that's beyond a 10-year agreement. But other than that, it should be, as long as it's a reasonable agreement, then it should be fine.
How do we get the map? So I guess from a CDD perspective, is there a place for the master plan advisory group to come in and work with you guys and be at the table as we start having these really high level cursory discussions? Because I think that's where our strength is, being able to obviously go out, get people in the community, get volunteers, be able to get their feedback and input. Does that run parallel right now with any of this conversation? I think that's important because obviously right now we're kind of in the charter development process. We have 11 applicants out there. Where does that fit in with kind of what we're doing?
and again, I'll take a first crack at the answer. I think my challenge is, I don't know what the charter is. I don't know what the assignment is, you know, trying to figure out if there's going to be some joint agreement between us, some joint pursuit, whatever verbiage you want to use there, to have an understanding on our side. How is that master plan group again? And we need to be a little careful because although they are still our constituents, we are a governmental board, so the ability to have committees and things like that's a little bit different, but at least to the extent that the master plan group at minimum would advise you guys on what it is you're looking at, particularly to the extent that, hey, again, some of the same questions you're going to be asking are the same questions we're going to be asking. So I think that to the extent that they advise you, and that in turn, in a joint agreement between boards, advises us, I'm open to the conversation, but again, I'm challenged because it's early to tell, because I haven't heard a charter, I haven't heard an assignment. I mean, I have ideas in my mind. Hey, if we were to pursue this, you know, what are different things that would be useful to the discussion for the master plan group to do? Got opinions, but I want to reserve on those right now because it's not my group. It's your assignment to come up on those.
So we want to wait 3 years to figure out what to do with this building? Is that what I'm hearing like?
Why would you ask that question?
I'm
No,
asking.
you are asking a
All right,
question, but
I'm asking.
it's undermining what we're trying to
I'm
do
not
here.
understanding anything.
Why
I'm
can't she answer the
agreeing with
question
you.
without a commentary?
You can just
from
try
you?
to figure out, again, like,
She's a grown up.
I'm asking if
Thanks for telling me that.
You
they,
needed it.
No, you do.
All right,
if
guys,
they
please.
can't do this in 2 or 3 years, welcome to the CROA board. If they can't do this in 2 to 3 years, this building is gonna just sit here and like, we're not gonna do anything with the building until you figure out what you're doing. I'm not saying that I'm not working with the CDD. And when Cindy says you do your thing, we do our thing, we are responsible for this building and we need to do something with it. And as soon as the master plan group says, hey, this is what we want in this building, we should have the right to move forward with it.
Are we not going to consider, as a CROA board, renting facilities for the management company for 2 years?
Yeah, we're gonna.
So that's 2 years. So
But
will
the
you say,
buildings-
how can this building sit here for 3 years? That's 2 years.
But that anticipates the building being worked on.
there's also time to form the group, time to
Right.
determine the
So
bonding,
they take
time to
2
determine
years.
the land availability, time to determine, I mean, there's a lot of things going on. And again, we're at a really good point now because we have the charter. In all transparency, I stopped writing it in anticipation of this, because if this is going to change any of this, I think we need to do that now before we start getting everyone appointed and start moving. And
It shouldn't though, because the master plan is the master plan regardless of how the master plan group is dictating this.
but if
So-
CDD is coming in and they're now an important stakeholder at the table, it's no longer the CROA Master Plan Advisory Group, it's a celebration master group. There's other considerations that we.
But
have to
it always was that.
But this is their project.
Mhm.
I'm gonna say just simple, this is their project. You don't even know where Little League is gonna go. We had this discussion, I think, quite a few months ago. Where is Little League gonna go before we even talk about buying that land?
So one of the definitive things I would like to get out of tonight, Charles, to your question, what are some, or I'm sorry, Bill, I think it was, what are some go-ahead points? One of the definitive things I would like from your board is, Mark Vincentonis, our engineers here, there had already been some engineering done on, some people call it Lot F, some people call it Lot E, the space back behind the soccer fields. Property thing says Lot E, but whatever. That has been, Mark, if you want to describe it, I mean, it's begun, it's had some beginning surveys, but it is not sufficient in order for us to make a determination that we can actually hit some stuff. Mark, you kind of looked, idea of putting ball fields out there, you want to.
Yeah, we've looked at that property. I'm sure everyone's familiar with it.
Can you speak into a mic?
Sure.
Question, what is that?
Roughly about 10 years ago, I think we were contracted to provide a survey of that land along with some of the other parcels in the civic corridor when the dog park and the soccer fields were active projects. So we do have that information. Still not 100% complete. There's still some easements and stuff that I noticed were lacking, and those should be pretty easy to do. I think we'd want to get a real good handle on the off-site improvements that might be needed to access that site, vis-a-vis the signal that's there and the alignment of Celebration Boulevard, the way it goes into North Village. It's a fairly wide median there. Put an entrance across. In enter and exit would probably need to line up with those. then we need to obviously squeeze a parking lot in there. The property does have some challenges. I think someone alluded to it, that it really wasn't the best developable property. You know, there are some wetland tracks and Reedy Creek owned parcel in there. There's conservation easements, flowage easements, and a lot of floodplain. So it does have some challenges in there to try to develop that, whether or not.
So Little League wouldn't be the best option.
But we went ahead and plopped in a couple 200-foot fields, which is what you've got over here. You can kind of fit one right at the entrance. And then one maybe farther up, it would kind of overlap that existing pond that's there. And maybe you could reconfigure that pond in such a way to allow it to fit. There's that big spillway that's there. That something would have to be done with that because there's all the water coming out of the pond. It just
That would cost a lot of money, right?
But let's not presuppose.
I'm just asking.
Well, but the answer is, Celia, is we don't know. And I
There's
think.
a lot of water there that has
That's
to.
Right.
That is a
What-
lot of water.
What we're asking for your permission for is permission for our engineer to go out over the next 30, 60 days, do whatever engineering studies he needs to do. We'll do that at our cost. That we can have him go out and determine that, listen, there's been a lot of commentary. I have heard time and time again from multiple people. That is supposed to be where the iconic building was built. Well, guess what? Read the deed restrictions from the county. The 2014 deed restriction specifically excludes putting a building out there. And that was one of the things that was noted in the town hall report. And I went back and read the deed restrictions as well, and it's there clear as day. Now, that may have changed since the beginning of Celebration when that was intended to be the iconic building, but what's in the deed restrictions right now excludes the idea of a building. And I think in part it's because of between the shape and the wetlands and everything else. So are there some challenges? No doubt. Right now, I think, you know, from what I've kind of temperature checked from Mark, we've got about a 20% solution. It is predicated. I've had conversations with Alec Ross over at CLL and said, hey guys, what would you like to have? And realistically, here's what we think we might be able to fit. We're not there yet. Mark needs to figure out, is this really in the art of the possible? Right now, we don't know. So I would like permission from your board to actually access that land and go do an assessment and see what could be done out there.
Well, you know, I'm on the CDD. I feel like we need a plan first before we as a CDD spend money looking at this lot. I don't know what the master plan is. I really don't even know what we would put in this amenity center. You know, we just don't have anything yet. So we need a plan, and we all are looking out for the residents. You know, that's my main thing. And that's why I suggested just make it as public as possible what we're doing. So everyone, as many people as possible would be able to access the information that we've been discussing. But first things first, like I just kind of tune out because what are we going to do with baseball? You know, where are we going to put them? But we may not need to move it if your master plan doesn't require it, you know? So why are we looking at that other lot?
That was my
before?
question before, because the
Yeah.
owner comments were all about, don't get rid of baseball. Where did that even come from?
I don't know.
There's been CROA has had no plan to get rid of baseball.
And I predicated the opening of my comments in our workshop. That was the first thing I said is if we do anything on this K-8 field, it will include, if I've got a vote in it, which I do, a plan for where to put baseball, that it does not preclude them from being able to go season to season to season.
So back to Cassandra's point and Jared's point as well, and I know this was something that I had talked to the CROA board about, was my recommendation was this master plan advisory group should provide you the roadmap. And then CROA get together with CDD to figure out how to fund that roadmap. Because obviously CROA can't afford to do everything. And CDD does have other options of ways to fund things. So there could be some, I think that's where the joint partnership would play in well, but you need that roadmap before you start making those decisions.
But I think part of that too is an assessment of what are the assets available to us as a group.
Correct.
Exactly.
And you know, to my knowledge, lot D has certainly been surveyed. Lot B, I believe, has been surveyed. Lot F has been partially surveyed. Everything else that's out there, the only things I'm aware of that are in the discussion which haven't been fully surveyed are F and over here. You know, so, and again, I appreciate what you're saying, Cassandra, on kind of the cart before the horse, but in order for us to develop a plan, part of the initial part of the plan has to be what are the assets that are in play?
Well, I think an engineering study may not be too far cart in front of the horse because you're going to need that information to inform an advisory group on
Right.
what can be put out there.
Absolutely.
I mean, we know what can and can't go on lot D and lot B because of the prior studies that have been done. We don't fully know what can go on lot F or over here because those studies haven't been done. I mean, we just completed a full amenity assessment in preparation for this master plan advisory group. So they know the state of the facilities and what needs to be done. And a lot of it is a big spend to get done. So I don't think necessarily an engineering study is.
I think that's a wonderful idea.
And I was gonna say exactly what you said, is that until we know what we can put on F, we can't plan to put anything in F, and it becomes an unknown. And it's better to spend the money now than say, we'll put it on F, and then find out later we can't afford to put it on F. And so we need to spend a little upfront money,
And I will say,
particularly theirs.
well, and guys, I will say, we have not, well, I want to be careful because we have not voted on this.
Right.
But I first want to get permission from you guys here that you would be open to the idea that we have
And then we'd have to.
a meeting next week that we would need to vote on that in our meeting to actually go to expend the funds to do that. Our meeting next Tuesday.
Hey,
Do we
Mark,
have to vote?
I'm sorry. So when you do your study, it will tell you how much usable land there is. Will you also be able to tag a cost to it, how much it would cost to make it usable, or no? You just start with,
Try to come up with some estimates, but without a detailed plan of everything that's going in there, it's hard to get an exact
To be a
estimate, but we could look at.
usable purposes. Nobody recommends anything, just saying could be this, could be this, could be this.
I think you'd want to really get a handle on what can fit there. When you consider adding a parking lot in there, how many spaces you might want. That could be done fairly easily and laying out a parking lot and showing, and I know we're shooting for 2 fields, but it may just be one that ends up fitting there by the time you put a parking lot in there.
I don't mind working with Mark and coming up with a scope. This is something I do on a daily basis to come up with an engineer opinion of probable costs and do a dirt analysis to know exactly what the deficit would be in this case. And then we can apply a cost per really truckload for dirt to come up with an estimate of what it would become usable.
well, because I think that would be important too, because I think if the cost is astronomical, then that would also have I mean,
That
you can
informs
do
the
it,
discussion.
of course.
So,
So,
Yeah,
so.
I think we should vote on it. We can vote on it here at this
We need
meeting.
to make a motion.
Yes.
Make a motion for the-
I don't.
one more thing.
I was gonna say one more thing.
I was gonna say one more thing too.
I was gonna say 2 more things.
Don't change our mind.
Go say 3 more things, Celia. So here's the thing, because everybody says costs a lot of money. I think we've all heard that. Here's a newsflash. Every good thing we do costs a lot of money. Right? Whatever we do for residents, if we're gonna do this right, it's not gonna be, hey, we got it on the cheap, because we know what that means, right? I'm gonna throw numbers out here. They're not realistic because I don't know how much this costs. Write that down. Post that. If you have just the fill for one location costing $2 million, and that was the only project you were going to go ahead and do, that's a lot of money. If you're doing a master plan project that costs $20 million across everything and added all these amenities, that $2 million is not a lot of money, because it's part of a bigger plan to bring celebration into 2023 or whatever you want to call it. Because there are communities that are not as lucky, I should say, at celebration, that have much better amenities. We're falling behind big time. And so I know things cost money, but I just want to put things in perspective, because, as much as we say, this, that, whatever, our residents are really asking for this. I met a celebrator who says, when are we going to get our senior center? Here's our shot to give something as a teen center, senior center, everything else. I just want to put that in perspective. I know there's going to be bumps along the road. That's fine. But the residents have been asking for this for 20 years. I'm being nice. You're a little older, just like, but so I again, just put this in perspective, because we're just trying to do the right thing. Bottom line.
And so are we.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't look like it, but we are.
No, I know.
So the residents have been asking for a master plan. Master plan, master plan, master plan. On lot D. Why is your selection of property over here and not on lot D?
They don't know.
Well,
No, that's not what I'm saying. It's like,
that's,
why are we talking about taking the baseball fields away? Spending all the money to relocate them when lot D is there, available now to build whatever you want on it.
No, you don't put a building there.
You can't.
Mark just told you can.
I didn't say that. We
Greg
didn't
just
talk
told you.
about
you
lot
can
D.
She's talking about D, she's not talking about F.
Not lot D, Jack. So why can't we keep our community center, our civic center, what word am I looking for, Lauren? Here,
Amenity center.
amenity center here. For everything that the residents are asking for the past 20-something years. And build the sports complex down on lot D. I don't understand why we have to spend all this money on property, find a space for a little league, which
What are you saying?
You know, it's, you know,
I'm just trying to understand why we're locating Little League, and Little League still won't have a big field for the older kids to play on, guaranteed.
we don't know that yet.
Well, I'm trying to understand why
Cecilia,
Celia, lot D is not big enough to put ball fields on.
I didn't say lot D to put a ball
You just
field.
said that.
I'm talking about an indoor sports facility.
Celia, and I'll give you the not intended to be not nice answer, but I'm just going to give you the honest answer. The past 10 minutes have been the first time that CROA has ever told us that they would entertain the idea of allowing us to have access to anything on the civic corridor.
Really?
Yeah,
Well,
when we had our conversation a month ago, it was a CDD only meeting because we had not been approached by CROA that there was interest in doing a partner discussion. Now that we're here, that's why we're here, is whether or not.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to.
Well, I understand, but I'm trying to diffuse the sound and the fury here of why we can't consider things. And the honest answer is because we haven't gotten a temperature check from your board that you would be open to an idea of us being able to help co-build things out on the civic corridor.
Take lot D off our hands. Build an indoor sports facility, and then let us, what Cindy was trying to say, and not that we don't want to work with the CDD, let us fix this building to what the residents, to what that master plan advisory group says. This is what should be in this building for the residents, and put the sports out on the civic corridor and keep that all athletic. But that's just how I think.
And let me just clarify my you do you comment. I had somebody come up to me several weeks ago and say, if I were CROA, I would be buying up every piece of land that I could here. Because once the land is gone, it's gone. I would hate, from our perspective as a homeowners association, I would hate to let this one little parcel of land that's in a prime location go. Even if it's for the benefit of the residents, 20 years from now, maybe something else would want to be done with this land. I don't know.
Are you talking about this building?
Yeah. I would, but I would lease you land.
Well,
So I think the long story short, from the CROA board perspective, and you guys can correct me if I'm not accurate in the statement, is there is interest in partnering with the CDD and looking into either selling, leasing something on lot D, whatever parcel there might be interest in. But the desire is to have that dictated by a master plan advisory group first.
Jared?
I wouldn't say dictated, but I would
Well,
say
sorry,
recommended,
Guided,
guided by, yeah.
just like the advisory
Absolutely.
group Celebration Hall. That
Yeah.
massive presentation
Yep.
together, and
one thing too that I think we need to be mindful of is your bandwidth at Grand Manors in terms of if we're going to start, we're going to build, let's just hypothetically, we want to fix this building. Again, that's something you have to be prepared to take on. You have to take, and that's a lot. It is a lot, as we've shown. And there's a lot of other things to your point with the maintenance and the other things that we should embrace this partnership. We should embrace the financing. We should embrace the project management, all the scale and everything that you bring. so that you can get good at what you need to do, which is the day-to-day HOA. That's.
Well, and something I'll throw in there too, again, I'm open to any discussion. If the takeaway here is simply that, hey, CROA is interested and you guys want to, kind of go and figure out where within the left and right limits you guys feel like you want to play, I think that's a great next conversation. Part of my interest, one guy personally, in the lot next door is, again, approaching one of our other peer stakeholders, being the school district, as I look at their challenges, both for their students and their gym space, and that mapping up to what we may be able to do, where it is, to the point before, take the land you can get when you can get it. If the school district is interested in giving this community, not our board, this community, that land for free in exchange for a joint use agreement that will benefit hundreds of kids who are all children of residents in this community, that's a meaningful proposition to me that weighs heavily in the consideration of what I put where. Not saying that has to necessarily dictate it, but right now there are some strong winds from the school board in support for that kind of
So
thing.
if you're putting kids in that building during the day, during school, does that building become a lockdown building now because the kids from the school are in there using it?
What I said earlier was, again, hypothetical, and we've talked about this with the school facility chief. We would have to partition out whatever space was in the agreement that was going to be used by the school during those hours. That would have to be a secured area. So, I mean, you get gyms all the time where they've got dividing walls, there would be secured access. They would have to build basically a channeled walkway over to the building. So the kids are still behind the fence line the entire time, that whatever space is available to them, which I would not be supportive of giving them the entire community center, nor do I think they're asking for that. But they would want some meaningful space to be able to extend their gym services for the kids. That part would be exclusive access during those hours. During the open community hours, the rest of that would be opened up.
Okay, so then one more, I'll play devil's advocate again. What's that, NIMBY? NIMBY?
Not in my
Not
backyard.
my backyard.
Mhm.
So nothing against you. You live always in the back of Artisan. I don't want to look at a multi-story building on Celebration Avenue that's going to take over that green space and those little league.
So
Would you
as you're driving,
Say something?
Yeah, we got back into the not my backyard.
Excuse me?
Always what burns every plant in this community.
Yeah,
I don't want to live near a dog park. I don't want to live near this.
but the
I don't wanna
dog
live
park,
near that.
Adam, is
No
on
one
the,
lives near that space. That's one of the.
nobody lives here?
so
People do, Celia, but they all purchased those lots knowing that that was a school facility with fields and buildings. It's not a
Fields.
fundamental change of use. It would not require a zoning requirement. It's not like you're putting up a meth lab, but you act like.
Nobody-
Celia, would
No,
it increase our homeowners values?
It may not.
it
May not having a big building over here on Celebration Avenue.
But
They,
our charges protected because they're living in existing homeowners,
Right.
correct?
4,000 plus
So-
residents. It's not one across the street or one that's.
hold on a second.
All right, Adam.
Cindy, go
I just
ahead.
say, I would like to go back to the original discussion about making a motion to allow the CCDD to hire Mark to go do an engineering report on Lot F as the first step.
I have an unpopular statement on that. We don't, CROA doesn't
Yeah, you can't.
vote in workshops historically.
Ah, that's right. It's a discussion item. So you are very.
That's a good point. I was gonna ask you that, and you beat me.
But
Can we give Alec a minute? I know he's been waiting patiently.
I just want to speak on behalf of the league. These fields are not great. Kathy talked about, they haven't been maintained. They don't have restroom facilities. They don't have storage. They don't have what every other little league has in our district. We're laughed at. So don't hold this sacred. We love the idea of an opportunity to look at areas that we can build new fields and be the shining star in this community, not an embarrassment, which is what we have today. We can't put a shade structure up over our bleachers, which blew in over in the hurricane 2 years ago. We have anthills all over the place. We have fences that are curled up. This is not what we want to hang our hat on in terms of what this community is about. So if it's community center, I don't care. If it's, hey, Little League has an opportunity to see something better, yes, we're interested. So don't hold us hostage in this conversation of, but then the fields go away. Don't be proud of this. This is not where we want to hang our hat. So we're open to all these topics.
Can we ask if there's any other owner comments since the workshop and just get?
Sure. Smithy, come on up.
I have to go home and put my daughter to bed, so I'll be quick. So community center for you guys. I think if you're going to put things online, would be great to have summarized case studies of other places that have done this so that the community could at least understand like what the fees were, everything else. Also, since all of us have been paying into the non-ad valorem tax for years, shouldn't there also be not only a monthly fee or yearly fee for these people, but some kind of initiation fee? Because we've been paying in for years. So that's something to think about.
Thinking outside the box.
And then thank you. And then, you know, with our other CROA amenities, we get, you know, 3 or 4 people in for free to those events. How many times will we be able to do that at the center? Because that would mean I could bring my buddies and they'd never have to pay, you know, if it's like that. So that's something to think about in that. I love the idea. I love the idea of a community center. And again, we need to define what these are. Celia, when you talked about keeping the 851 building, when you guys were talking about that and potentially keeping the fields over here, that's a great idea too. I know he talked about maybe not liking the fields as they are. I agree. We need restrooms. There are no restrooms for these people out here. So if they are kept, we need restrooms. Last idea. Somebody's going to get this land. So it's either CROA or CCDD. So if CCDD buys the land over here that the fields are on, what's to say that we can't say, hey, you know what? Let's do a land swap. You guys take lot D. We're going to take this. And if they want the field somewhere else, build the field somewhere else and put a park right there. That would be beautiful. Last thing, I will not be on the master planning committee. I know originally I wanted to be on the committee and I still do. I just cannot take the time to do it with a 5-year-old little girl. She is my world. And this is at night and sorry, but I will continue to send you guys ideas.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
So we will put this on the
With
agenda.
with that pause in the action here for a second, I mean, again, I think this is really for you guys to inform you as to what do you feel the next steps are? The only one from our side that I've heard is the Lot F study, unless there's anybody else from my board that has any definitive takeaways.
Shall we put this as an action item to vote on allowing them to do the engineering study on Lot F for our next meeting?
Can I just interject for a second?
Sure.
This is a meeting. It was not advertised as a workshop. However, CROA cannot make a motion to have the CDD staff do anything.
We would need to vote on it next week.
Right.
We're just getting permission from
Or
them
you
now.
can do it now,
Okay.
if that's what you want to do. But I was just trying to,
Well, that would tighten the timeline.
it is a
little bit.
meeting,
Okay.
but they cannot vote to have CDD staff do anything. That would have to come from
They
you.
can vote to allow us to do it,
Absolutely.
and then we can vote now to actually do it.
Absolutely.
There you have it.
I move to do it subject to their vote.
Second,
Well, why don't we let them vote first?
They can't vote.
We can't vote on things that
I think I
are.
wait till next meeting.
Never mind.
I'm still second. I'm not gonna be here.
Although it was advertised as a meeting, but you just
Good try.
normally don't do
This is
discussion items.
advertised as a meeting.
It's our meeting.
It's a joint
Okay.
meeting. I mean, I don't know what that means for CROA, but I would assume you can vote because it was advertised as a meeting,
It was
not a
on as a
workshop.
discussion item. I mean, this item wasn't specifically put on here as an action item. So, I mean, technically, you don't really need a vote to allow them onto the property. But if you want time to reflect on it and think about it, then yeah, put it on as an action item for your board meeting.
If we just need time to reflect on this and then we can vote over email.
Not by email,
Jared.
but you can do it by unanimous written resolution.
That just what?
I
We
can,
can't agree on anything.
No, but yeah. What, our board meeting is on the 27th, right?
It's next week.
Next week.
What?
Greg, do you want to take a vote to let
Yeah.
Mark?
So we've got a motion from Jack, a second from Tom, from my board. Any other comments, questions, discussions, thoughts
That's to do what?
to do?
So do, engage Mark to do work subject to their approval.
Lot F engineering study.
Lot
development.
F?
Lot of.
Yeah.
Do we want to include in that also the K8 lot, or do we just want to do Lot F now? The lot next door.
We need K to,
Percolate more?
yeah,
Just Lot F.
Okay, that's fine. All right,
Lot of.
I got a motion and a second on Lot F. Any other comments?
okay, and we vote.
You mentioned.
I don't, that's,
Just to move forward.
doing an engineering.
Or how much, how much time or money can
Do
you
you-
spend?
Back up.
What are we,
Could-
what are
could
we
you-
like?
Could you give us a not to exceed? I mean, Mark, you've looked at obviously what's already done now. I think you know conceptually. Can you give us a not to exceed number that you would anticipate there that we could approve?
And Mark, I think the deliverable is to find the engineer's opinion of probable cost to bring the site up to a buildable level and how much developable acreage that is.
You want to throw a number against that?
We want to include some of the offsite surveys. I think we want to do maybe at least a concept plan with that, like something in there.
As far as the actual design of where
This
particular
is the
assets will go?
preliminary parking layout and seeing how it fits.
We pretty much need just a developable palette, what we have to work with. And then at least that gives us the constraints.
Then we can go ahead and vote on what we need next steps.
Yeah, that's the first step.
Be big enough to do anything.
Not to exceed 10,000.
Mark, you want to phone a friend?
Yeah, we'll do 10.
Do I hear 9?
Name that song yourself.
10,001.
10,000. All right. Jack, you want to amend your motion?
Okay.
Include a not to.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, amended to not to exceed 10,000.
All right. Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? There you go. So pending your approval, we will start that.
Why, so just out of curiosity, it costs us nothing. We just have to grant them access literally to the land.
Yeah.
We can go around and say yes right now. I'm just trying to figure out why we would wait until the next meeting.
Usually you have a vote on things. I can submit a unanimous written resolution that's just 2 sentences long, and as long as everybody signs off on it, we're done.
You guys, we're not in a huge rush. If we're talking your next meeting's next week.
So if you want to wait,
Yeah.
it's fine. I can send you a half a page thing.
Cheaper.
Yeah, signature.
Can I do can I ask a question? Can I ask a question?
We got 10 minutes.
Maybe non-ethical. I don't know. No, I didn't say that.
Don't ask him an ethical question.
Are we allowed to ask a resident in the audience to come up and answer a question if he so chooses to?
That would not be good.
Like, sometimes we ask Greg to weigh in on stuff at our meetings.
I have, and I communicated to him ahead of time that he's wanted to do that. So Tom Hall, I know personally, so I invite him up sometimes. So
I just think
does it have to do? Does
he
it have
can
to
come
do
up
with
and make a comment.
Does it have to do with incorporation?
so it's got to do with this.
Because if we want to stay on
I
task,
was gonna say, we have 13 minutes if we can try to, maybe, again.
we can always come back to it.
We're not leaving without incorporation.
Yeah, we need to have
We've got to
corporation
address that.
conversation.
12 and a half minutes.
All over pizza. Yeah. All right.
Can we vote on incorporation?
No,
We can't vote on anything.
no voting on incorporation. This is simply some advisory commentary from us of where we're at.
So how about we
Okay,
vote
can I just again interject? The reason we advertise this as a meeting and put incorporation on here is because we need answers from CROA to be able for us to move forward, because that is the one thing that is holding us up
Yes.
in the completion, one way or the other. It doesn't matter.
Well, and they've got a meeting next week, so
Right,
if they
right.
take
And we
and
can put
digest.
this on the agenda
Yep.
as well.
So
Yep.
that's why
Yep.
that was the main purpose of this joint meeting.
Yep. So if we are good on community center, we can shift gears.
Right.
Everybody good?
And then if we have time, we can come back.
All right. Incorporation. So we started the endeavor back in early 21, getting a consultant. I'm doing a recap for everybody because I don't know if everybody's quite sure where we're at yet. We were first CDD in the history of Florida to be required to do this based on some triggers in state law, largely around the geographic size and the population. So we started the study in 21. Really, the CDD's role in this, we do not vote whether or not to incorporate. That is up to the residents, and that is up to the state legislature. Our charter is to provide an analysis and a report of a feasibility based on multiple things, mostly around finances and governance structure. We then present that to the community. If there's a vote there, if it's a feasible option, the community takes a vote, and then the legislature would take it as well. We have finished several months ago the financial piece of that. We got a consultant on board. The initial piece of this were celebration to incorporate. The starting point would be interlocal agreements with the county for services they already provide. To I know a lot of commentary around this. We as a town would not get any additional millage taxes, which is the large piece that we all pay based on our home values. All that would still go to the county, 100%. We don't have any right as a municipality to claw any of that back now that we're a formal government. What we would get are some small pieces of gas taxes, some of the county sales taxes, things like that. So the analysis, and this is not the formal report. We still owe the formal report, but I'm just going to give some recaps. The formal analysis from the consultant was, it was a loss to the community. I think, Angel, about $500,000 a year, 600,000 a year, somewhere-ish.
It was, about between 600 and 700.
Yeah. So, and that is on the assumption that all of the county government organizations, we talked to the sheriff's department, road department, fire department, all that kind of stuff, they would all come in here and continue to provide the services that they provide today at no additional cost to us. That's not binding, but they did say, hey, as long as you're not asking for anything more, we wouldn't charge you anything. That's the starting point for what the town of Celebration, the municipality of Celebration, would work with. From where they go from there, that's up to the municipality to figure out what they want to do with all those services. If they want to stand up their own police department, blah, blah, blah. That would not be the starting point from the corporation. So that already is several $100,000 at a loss, which in the grand scheme of a community isn't insignificant, but it's not mind-numbing. The other piece of this is the governance structure. So the discussions we've had is, this is kind of an important one, right? I mean, we've got, if I count right, I think 7 different governing bodies in this town right now. Part of the equation of this would be, would incorporation help simplify a lot of those? As an example, and again, this is not etched in stone, but the discussion we had from our consultant was CDD would likely go away, or if it were to persist, it would only persist for its bonding authority. All the field maintenance stuff we do, pretty much everything Angel and her team does, there would be no reason for that to exist. Really, it's in the benefit of incorporation from municipality that we would cede that authority and those responsibility and those funds and assets over to the municipality. That's why it would be stood up. So that one, again, we haven't committed on it, we haven't voted it, but conceptually, that's where the consultant recommended we go. ECDD obviously is its own beast. Disney controls. So I don't know that there's anything to do there. We haven't engaged Disney on this piece of it yet, whether or not they would give up water infrastructure. My hunch is, if I look at the wins, probably not, because they make money off of it. Then you look at the other 2 remaining major boards are CROA and CROA. CROA has a piece of it, but not a substantial one as far as the amount of assets that they own. Really, the big one is from CROA. So the question to you, and again, I want to emphasize, I'm going to foot stomp this. We are not looking at this pro or con. We are simply asking the question, were incorporation to happen, what are the things that CROA would consider ceding to a municipality? The reason this becomes a challenge is the way state law is written, there is no provision to go back. If we make a decision to incorporate as a community and the state legislature approves it, there is no mechanism to go back to being a CDD. And the reason that's relevant is because, again, from what I've understood from the consultant and staff, a lot of the CDDs that have incorporated over time have wanted to go back because they've realized they have not realized cost savings. There's been whatever variety of reasons that they've wanted to reverse themselves. So the question that I asked Jan to pose to Tom was, mechanically, is there an ability for CROA to put a vote out to the CROA membership to say, if incorporation were to happen, then CROA would be willing to cede, sell, whatever, these responsibilities, authorities, and most importantly, these assets over to the municipality. It's not our place to say what those should be. It is simply a question to you all. If this were to proceed forward, are you interested in doing that? My opinion is, if CROA says we want to retain what we've got, and there are a lot of reasons to do that, corporation really doesn't make a lot of sense. You're going to have a municipality where majority of the assets are owned by a private homeowners association. So what's the purpose of the municipality? We're still outsourcing everything to the county. We're at a loss lead. There's not a lot there, especially in the simplification of the governance structure, where we would be essentially going away. Is there a downsizing of CROA to focus on those things that homeowners associations do fundamentally, of covenants, things like that? where you guys might see it over Parks and Rec types of things and special events types of things. Again, I don't know. But this is the question to you guys is, are you willing to have that as part of your discussion? If not, honestly, that's an easy answer. That closes the book on our incorporation study. We'll take the rest of this. We will publish the report. We'll make, Jana, use my verbiage here, make recommendations, whatever we do.
We submit, yeah, we
Yeah.
submitted to the state.
Yeah.
Feasibility study, that's the first step.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to make a decision tonight, or are we still in that workshop?
No, it's still a workshop.
It is up to you guys what you want to do tonight. We are simply posing, this is the status we're at. We've done the analysis on the municipality side with the county and the other stakeholders. Now it's really on the key pieces with you guys.
Question, if I'm hearing what you're saying. It sounds like the community votes, and Tom's written notes on how that works and what number of votes need to be yes votes. That happens first. And then we get together and figure out how this is gonna work.
The question I posed to Tom is, could you do a conditional vote of the association of the membership to say,
Okay.
if Celebration Incorporated, then CROA would turn these things over? Tom?
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
so the steps are first, the board has to decide that it should be put to the membership. So that's what the CCDD is asking you to decide at the next board meeting is, do you, as the leadership of the community, think that this is a good idea and should be submitted to the membership? If you decide at the next meeting that no, your take on it is that the community does not want to transfer ownership of private amenities to a city, then you would say, no, we don't want to do that. You would report that to the CCDD. If a majority of you said, yes, we think that this is something that we would like to present to the membership, because as a board, we think that this is a good idea for whatever reasons, then the next step would be to submit it to a membership vote. And you would identify two key things. Number one is what Greg said, which is this is a conditional vote, which is if the state approves a new city, then CROA is conveying ownership of these common areas to the new city. So it's conditional on that sense of it.
And what I would suggest is I understand the assets piece because of your charter requires the vote. I would also suggest as you're looking at this, it's not just assets that are a key piece, but also responsibilities and authorities, right? That may not necessarily be tied to assets, Parks and Rec type of things. There are assets that go with that. There's also the staffing piece of that and everything else. I think, in my opinion, it all needs to be tied together. It needs to look at all the elements that would go.
Yeah, I think if you decided as a board to move forward with a membership vote, then we would talk about details that would need to be included in a conditional vote. And then it requires a vote of the membership. And as I mentioned earlier, anytime you're going to transfer ownership to a government agency, you're going to do this part of the outline. So
Just real quick. It doesn't mean that we'd have to hand over everything or nothing. It is an all or nothing.
yeah, you would. Yeah, so that's a good question. I think several of you would ask that question earlier or before this meeting. You would decide what you would like to submit as being transferred. So if you said, okay, we would be willing to transfer some areas. Here's the areas that we're willing to transfer. You would communicate that to the CCDD because that's going to affect the recommendation. For example, if you said, well, we want to keep all the pools and we want to keep all the other infrastructure, but we're willing to turn over a few open spaces, then the CCDD might say, that doesn't seem like it's something we want to recommend. That's fine. But they want to know what you're willing to turn over or submit to a membership vote as a conditional approval.
One quick question. If that happens, does that mean that stuff that's turned over is public and everyone?
Jan?
That they would.
Okay,
I knew the answer. I wanted to learn.
It's a question, even though we've talked about it so much, I've never asked.
Yeah.
So I thought,
They
here's
were
my
different
chance.
City facilities,
Okay,
so
thank
we
you.
charge different rates for city people versus outside the city people, but they would be in public city facilities.
There are different rules that municipalities go on versus what CDDs go under. Yeah.
So if we put this on the agenda, Oh, I'm sorry, Celia. I can't see you because Charles is
That's
sitting.
okay. So if we just don't want to go with the incorporation, we can't just say to CDD, no, we're done, we don't want to do it? Or do we have to have a community vote?
No, no. So if the board decides that you do not want, if you're not in favor of incorporation and specifically not in favor of transferring assets and responsibilities to a new city, you would hold that vote next week. You would say to the CCDD, no, thank you. And then they would complete their report. And then
It'll be
probably
done.
incorporation doesn't happen.
It'll be done.
What
Never just talk about it again.
Does TCC, do they have an opinion? Like, I mean, where do they stand on all of this? Just out of curiosity, do they need to be in any way, shape or form in these discussions? Or how does that work from that perspective?
So TCC is aware of this because the same question was presented to CNOA.
Okay.
And also it would need to be presented to the CJC because there's some impact on them as well. Got it.
And I've
But-
had conversations with Paige over
Yeah.
the past 2 years, just kind of, hey, here's where we're at, you know, and then again, that more for an awareness, not that we're asking anything specifically from TCC. I'm curious, Tom, I had not heard, because CNOA is a piece of this. Was there any feedback from them yet? Or are they still digesting?
No, it has legs.
Yeah, I shared with Jan that at the last CNOA meeting, they discussed it, but there was no formal vote
Yeah,
on it.
Okay.
The appetite didn't seem to be there. Their main asset is Front Street and Market Street, and the appetite wasn't really there to turn over the ownership of those streets because they use them for their events quite frequently.
Now, let me ask Tom, just as a question, and I think, Jan, maybe for you, it's not just a question, or it's not solely a question of would CROA want to turn over? Is there an option? Would CROA want to sell? I don't know if that makes a difference in the equation or not, or
Yeah, so it's deed, transfer, convey, ownership. So when we were talking earlier about a lease, it doesn't require a membership vote. But once you're taking ownership and you're transferring it, dedicating it, conveying it, whatever you want to call it, selling it, doesn't matter how you're doing it. That if you're selling, turning over ownership of common areas owned by CROA, then the members get to vote on that.
but the point being, your board could have the option to say, hey, we don't want to give things away, but we might want to sell things away. Again, I don't really,
It doesn't make a difference. Any transfer of
it
ownership.
has to go to a vote.
It
Yeah,
has to go to vote, regardless of how you're gonna do it. It's only selling, it's only leasing or licensing the use of it. It doesn't require.
yeah, I'm not trying to get around the vote, but just
Oh, I know.
that the option is there to the community, and when you present a vote, that you could phrase it
There's,
either way.
there's really no way around a membership vote
Yeah.
if the new city is gonna own that property or is dedicated to that property.
But what about duties and responsibilities outlined in the charter that don't have a value? So a non-asset, does that have to go to a vote also if they want to transfer?
So give me an example, because it's probably.
Covenants.
All right, covenants. So the CROA is contractually obligated to enforce its covenants and restrictions. So if there is a covenant violation and CROA ignores the violation, then there's a question about whether the association is complying with its duty to enforce its covenants. I understand the idea of possibly turning it over to some sort of code enforcement authority. Again, that would definitely require a membership vote to even consider it.
When you say it's contractually obligated, I'm sorry, obviously you get your contract with Graham Manners to execute that.
No, the actual charter is a contract.
CCN.
Okay, I see you're considered the charter contract.
Going down
Right.
rabbit hole.
Yeah.
You would have to
Way
change.
down the rabbit hole here. This is
Yeah.
really all it needs to be.
So let me ask board members, if we put this on the agenda for next week, would you please tell Lauren if there's any information that comes to mind that would help you make the initial decision as to whether or not we want to even consider pursuing an incorporation?
Reading this report, which is long and boring, but it also has a lot of good points in it. Who is responsible for answering all these questions? There's a whole lot of questions in here that need to happen, if then else. TCC is one of them, of course. Mentions Lexington and downtown. Whole lot of things about the finances.
Which report? Because we don't have the
I'm looking
final
at the
report.
July 22 BJM consulting report.
So that was an initial draft that doesn't have all
Yeah.
the information in it yet. That was well.
It's not the full report yet.
Right, and there are typos
But-
and.
But will they answer,
not
you
good
know, this
information.
question
All
about
of
the
those-
finances?
Yeah, all of that has already been answered. Essentially, all we need to know in order to move forward, there is a referendum, there's all these things that have to take place, but If CROA is not willing to relinquish their assets, then it makes no sense. It's kind of a yes or no thing, and it really kind of stops there. If they are willing to do that, then we proceed, and yes, there are other things that go into play.
And to answer your question, it's our responsibility as a board and working with the consultant to answer whatever questions need to happen so that we can present to the community. Here's what a governance structure looks like. Here's what an initial finance plan looks like.
Okay.
So next week, what we would be deciding is, do we as a board think that the community would be willing to turn over some or all of our assets? And we pursue incorporation and see where that takes us with incorporation.
I think
Correct.
maybe
Right.
next week on our thing, it should be, do we proceed or not proceed? Period.
Exactly.
That's it.
That's it.
Simple, yes
There's
or no,
nothing else.
not turn over assets and all of that.
Well, that's the key component.
Yeah,
They really need to know that.
Yeah.
That's what they've been asking me for a long time is, will CROA turn over its assets to a new city? And I know there's the question of, well, do we have to turn it all over? And the answer is not necessarily no. You could decide to withhold that, but they're going to need to know what you're willing to turn over and what you're not willing to turn over. That's going to impact their report, the state.
If your answer is yes, you're willing to entertain it, our next immediate question is, okay, what are you willing to do?
Because
To
it
take
either
a second
stops it right there, or it continues down the path
Yeah.
with incorporation.
so if the seven of us know that there's no way that we feel that there's no way that our residents would want to give up any of our amenities, all or any or some,
State that.
yeah,
Yeah.
then
That's all we need to know.
then that's it.
It's gonna be hard, at least for me, to know the temperature of the community as to how they feel about this.
You tell the community that anybody could come in and do what they want now
So
so.
separate from that, I mean, this is obviously a very important vote.
Well, and that's why it mentions that if you have any specific things that Lauren could gather, it's information like,
Is there an updated version of this report that's maybe not complete, but
We've been waiting
Yeah, we've been waiting
in order to finish the
it.
report.
We need the CROA input.
Yeah.
But again, I think
You have a work in
Yes.
progress, right?
We've
That
been
is,
asking since July.
you have a
every
work
year.
in progress document, a work in progress, not a finalized report
that's what I asked.
that has any more information than what he has in that.
So we stop.
That's it.
Okay.
No, we stopped it until we get that
But
information.
again, relative to CROA, I'm not trying to hide this, but it's immaterial. I mean, the question to you guys is what you're willing to turn over. The questions as far as taxation flows and all that kind of stuff, as residents, certainly we all want to know that, and that'll be in the final report, but that's not relevant to the question. Bill, I mean, I think to your point though is, you know, you don't know if the community wants this or not. If you pose it, if you guys vote yes, you're posing it as a vote to the community. So you're not determining it for the community. You're simply saying, hey, I want to put it to the community as a vote.
Even if you say yes or no, it's still, the process goes on. It still has to go to a referendum before the community. I mean, it's still.
There's still a lot more steps behind this.
Oh, yeah, I mean, the state's got involved, the county's involved,
Yeah.
taking away money from two other counties.
But if
Yes.
CROA is not willing
Cities,
to do
they
it,
get
it
less,
makes
we get
sense
more.
for us to move forward
Right.
in the feasibility and the study and all of that.
What's the time horizon? This is for this year, but just like it would be on this.
Yeah, so we were trying to submit it last year.
Correct.
We're.
2023, it's gonna be on this general, or it could be on this.
2024 is the earliest.
Yeah.
2024, sorry.
Yeah.
But in order to
We
do
need to
that,
get it submitted now.
Okay.
I mean, we're really.
there's months lead time in
Right.
order to get on the
Okay.
ballot.
There's a question online.
Yes, hi. Yeah, it's Tom Boltover for Raycroft.
hi, Tom.
What I think I heard that the question really is whether or not the CROA board, this is a question to the CROA board. Should the CROA board make this decision on their own, or should this go to a community vote? That's the question that we're looking for an answer.
No,
No, that's not the question.
It isn't? That's what I
No.
heard.
I think to Tom's point, if their board decides this is not worth pursuing, it will not go to a community vote for the community to weigh in on the vote. If the board decides to put it out to community vote, the community will obviously weigh in on the vote, at which point the community could say no, or they could say yes. Is
Well,
that
that's-
Tom kind of?
That's what I think I asked, yes. I mean, I think I said yes. So my question now that we've agreed on what the question is what would be the downside to letting the community decide whether this was the appropriate thing instead of the board deciding without our input?
I think the first thing might be cost related to it. Then if you're gonna put a vote to the membership, the question is, what assets are you willing to transfer? So you need to identify that. That's a requirement because they're gonna need to know that. And then it's gonna be
Okay,
a conditional
okay.
subject to it.
So there was part two. That the part two would be what would those assets be? But part one was the cost of actually asking the question. And what would that cost be?
Usually cost you around $10,000 to $11,000 per election, so it essentially would cost that.
But we need both.
Well, this would be a formal referendum. This could be in like a survey. I mean,
No, it's not.
it has to be, it has to go through the voting channels.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, super majority, you're talking 50% plus one of all unit owners.
I'm talking, there's two ways to have a vote, and in this vote, it's either a membership meeting where at least 20% participate and 2/3 of those that participate say yes, or it's like a referendum where at least 15% of the entire membership votes in favor, and at least 2/3 of those that do vote in favor. So, for example, if half the community voted, let's say it's about 2,250 members decided to vote in this action, then 2/3 of those, or about 1,500, would have to vote yes.
And this is under a quorum threshold thing. It's not a 50%, it's not a majority of the residents.
Right, it's not a majority of everybody voting for it,
Okay.
but it's 2/3 of those that participate, provided you have two minimum thresholds depending on the way you do it. The easiest way, the least stringent requirement is you do an election style vote where absentee ballots filled out and turned back in. And then you're going to count those ballots, and you're looking for two things. One, at least 15% of the people that voted in favor of incorporation / turning over assets to a new city, and at least 2/3 of everybody that voted in favor of it. So I know it's a little complicated. I'm sure that at least 15% of the people might say yes. So I'm really looking at, with 2/3 of the membership vote in favor of turning over X assets to a new city. Would that be just a few open spaces? I think they're going to come back and say that doesn't really move the meter. Is it going to be all of CROA's pools and the club, the associated clubhouses and other facilities? Well, that's probably going to move the meter and be part of the report. And then you're going to be basically asking if 2/3 of the people that vote would be in favor of that.
So for instance, 15% is around 750.
15%, I think, is 450.
I'm just-
But there's two votes.
10% is 450.
Right, you're right. Okay. So it's
15% is seven, let's just,
Celia did the numbers.
let's just say 700.
Okay.
So what you're saying is if less than 350 people voted against it, that would pass. If you had 700, 300, for instance.
A little bit off. It's
the minimum threshold vote as defined in the bylaws.
yeah. So you're talking, so
That's-
so at least 15% of everybody.
Which is we're taking at 700. We can do the 686 or whatever it is.
Well, for the purpose of this conversation, though, we can just add this to our agenda as a thing that we need to discuss, right?
So it's 670.
We don't need to have this whole.
Yeah.
What else?
I can put it. as
Oh,
an
I'm sorry,
item
thank
on
you.
your agenda, so you can decide if you want to put it to a vote or you want to
Great.
just say no.
Can we also have Tom at our next board meeting?
If he is available.
Yeah. When's your next board meeting?
Next one.
Can I ask you a question, Tom?
Yes.
Do we own the Artisan Park Clubhouse building?
No, you don't. I mean, I'm sorry. I take that. Yes, you do.
We own
However, the Artisan Park Clubhouse with restaurant and pool, that is an exclusive area. So there would have to be a special vote by those owners to approve transferring it. So on top of your general vote, you would also, if the board wanted to, would present it to just the Artisan Park service area members.
But there's no
Yeah.
question that can be transferred. That's their private little, it's up to them.
Well, it's up to them.
Up to Artisan.
So that's exclusive. So you would have a vote of the entire CROA community, but then you would also have to have a separate vote for just the service area members to say, do you want to do this? Because there's a special vote and there's service area documents.
Just before this goes to that point, and if this is crazy, because I've just been trying to like take this all in, does our finance committee need to like look at any of this too? There's none of that. Like if somehow like before we get to this vote, nothing doesn't we just go on ice and we're not gonna have the revenue, we're not gonna have the expenses. There's no
Yeah, I mean, if you're,
implications.
for example, if you're deeding over all passive parks and you're just keeping the pools, I mean, you're not losing revenue.
Who takes care of the parks then?
The city.
The new city?
Yeah.
Is city.
Or if you're deeding over all of the parks and some of the pools. and
But you're thinking staff, headcount, all that, like
Yeah,
those
that-
implications.
That would reduce it, and that would be that's part of the analysis that CDD is doing. That's why they need to know
Got it.
what would you not be willing to deed over to a city.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out if we have that conversation first before. we
From
go.
a pro perspective, I personally would like more than 1 week before we vote on it. I'm okay with adding it as a discussion item.
But that reports from.
I
Yeah.
understand,
We've been trying
but
to.
now we're face to face. Now, I've brought it up multiple times.
Yeah.
Believe me,
Yeah,
okay?
we're really to the point where we're behind.
But I don't,
our
but at the same
statutory-
time, I don't feel like everyone can get educated in 1 week.
And I'm not sure if you're gonna be educated correctly with that document, because there were typos and untruths. in
Well,
there.
but the document,
So,
the document,
you know,
Be educated.
yeah.
but the document is largely irrelevant. Again, I mean,
Yeah.
whether or not a municipality gets gas taxes or not gas taxes or the interlocal agreements doesn't materially affect what they're talking about here. The question to them is, are they willing to turn? Now, my comment, my suggestion to you is, to Lauren's point, just a suggestion. If you're gonna do this, don't piecemeal it, for the love of God. Don't give only the active parts, but not the passive part. Now, all we're gonna do is complicate this more, right? I mean, if we're gonna do this, the only way this makes sense is if it simplifies governance structure.
So-
I'm not trying to encourage you to do this. I'm simply saying, don't make things worse
So-
by only
so
giving
just-
half of the stuff.
Just to be clear, we cannot vote on whether there's a corporation. CCDD is the one who pushes it forward. Are you saying,
We don't vote on incorporation.
no, I'm not saying you vote on it, you push it forward, you shepherd it.
We put out a feasibility study, which
Right.
includes the governance and the financial aspects. It goes to a vote of the CDD constituency, which is all the
Right.
residents in town, and it goes to a vote of the state legislature.
Right, there needs to be no vote of CROA for that to go forward.
No.
No.
No, that was my point. Okay,
We're just telling them we're not interested.
The
That's
question
it.
that the board's been asked is,
That's it.
since
That's it.
for a year is, are you willing to turn over your assets to a city?
I just want to say, I want to get from you, since you guys are leading it. Are you saying that unless we agree to hand over all the amenities, that incorporation won't move forward?
No, I don't know. We can say that.
We can't.
Kind of said that.
No,
Yeah.
They're just making it very complicated.
Yeah, we're not saying it can't move forward. Again, it's not us to determine if it gets a vote or not. What I am saying is that there is not a financial benefit. It is quantitatively there. This will be a loss to the community to the tune of several $100,000s a year, just from a financial perspective. The only thing left that is a material benefit to the community is the simplification of the governance structure, which is only going to be achieved if the existing boards and the existing governance in town start ceding authorities materially to the municipality. We all have to acknowledge the fact the city's only useful if a city's actually there to do what a city normally does. That's why we would, again, what's in the draft report, we would essentially go away. Aside from our bonds, we would have nothing left.
Understood, but what I'm trying to say is, the statement you made just now, I agree with, right? There needs to be something substantive there. Does it need to be everything? That's what I'm questioning.
It doesn't matter what you come back with, because whatever you come back with, they're gonna put into the report and they're gonna submit it. And
Yeah.
then it's either gonna go or
Right.
it's not. That's it.
Right.
And doesn't the state have to approve this anyway?
Yes.
So we could go through all of this and the state will say, no.
possible.
Right?
Through several committees,
So-
and any committee gets done.
Why,
Because
Never make it to the state.
it's an exercise that we're required to go through in state law.
You,
Correct.
you should probably mention that. I'm not sure everyone knows why you started the study.
You
Yeah,
said
this
that
is,
at the
this is
Yeah.
required.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
we're about population.
I just want to like things to be
I
repeated
think
too.
it came about in 2021, am I
Yes,
correct?
it did. We
Yeah.
got a letter from, we got a letter from the state saying you've reached a population of 10,000.
Yep.
Therefore, under.
Just a
state law, you have to
formality.
Begin the process of.
So we can say next week, not interested. They'll add that to the report. It'll go through all the committees in, I was gonna say Indianapolis, in,
You got a
Tallahassee.
problem. but it's-
Yeah, I know. Tallahassee. And when it gets to some point, the state is gonna say either yes or no.
Well, there's,
And then if they say, yes, you will,
No, they won't.
they won't.
If the feasibility study comes back with absolutely no way this will work, that would likely be the end of it. If
Okay.
it looks like this will work, then it goes forward. Then we have a referendum of the constituents, it goes to the state, then you go to the higher levels. But right now, we just have to get the feasibility study as to whether.
And when you say work, you mean, will it benefit the community?
Yes.
And
correct.
right now, from the data you have, it doesn't look like it.
Not financially.
Not
financially does not.
And we're right in the middle of
Yeah, that's
our.
not the only consideration.
That's-
Yeah, but, yeah.
But yeah, just the point is governance, corporate governance, and we can talk about this further, but
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that CROA goes away.
CROA doesn't go
One
away
of the
at all.
goals-
CROA doesn't go away at all.
Yeah, so if one of the goals is, reducing complications of corporate governance, CROA stays. There's going to be, there would be required amendments to the governing document to transfer enforcement responsibility from CROA to the city. If that's the way we wanted to go. There would be other changes that would also need to be done to the CROA documents and then restructuring everything else. So.
I mean, I think to the point, it's really a blank sheet of paper to you guys. It could be all the way up to CROA goes away or anything between here and there.
Well, there's a vote to do that, but it's not realistic. That is a supermajority vote to remove CROA, and it requires a bunch of other notices and approvals. So, and it would also include TCC's approval. So that would, I think that's unlikely. It's not impossible, but
It's prohibitive. Yeah.
It's very unlikely.
So going back to our original conversation on Greg's plan, if it goes to incorporation, all of your discussion with building the amenity center and everything goes away,
No.
because CDD goes away.
No, the bond, anything that's done on the CDD still attaches the in
bond
regards to a
still-
bond. The bond still say you have the CDD in order to maintain and administer the bonds.
I mean, there would be,
So you just want a simple yes, go,
Yes.
oh, that's,
That's all
I don't
we needed.
understand why we can't. come
Can't we
up
make
with
it more
that.
complicated?
That's all we've needed
That's
for
right.
a year.
That's all they want since 2021 is like, can we go forward or not? I remember sitting in on the meeting.
And either way, it's fine.
We're just making,
Either way, it's fine.
it's up to you guys how you want.
I think we're making it more complicated than
I think we're just trying to understand what we're doing.
what?
I'm not. We're discussing it on Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
And if you guys have questions between now and then, shoot them over. Happy to have Jan kind of weigh in or whatever else to help inform your discussion next week.
Thanks, Greg.
So we'll stick that on our agenda too. Works. It is 25 after 8. Is anybody compelled to say anything?
Who's ready for beer? No, just kidding. Any comments from our board?
No.
No comment.
Nope.
Everybody? Everybody good?
Any public comment?
Everyone can agree, no one's gonna say anything, I'm good.
Yeah,
Any public comments? Either in the room or online? Going once, going twice?
That wasn't.
nobody wants to move. Did you see that? Everyone's like,
Motion to adjourn the CDD half of this meeting.
so moved.
Second. All right.
Motion to adjourn the call part of this meeting.
Second.
Tom, was that you?
Yes.
Favor.
I mean,
It's always me.
Dave, was that you?
These two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was
You were gonna say these two.